It's okay. So we'll, from there, we'll speak here.
Okay, perfect, my friend. Yeah, stairs. Yeah.
The stairs are.
Yes.
Oh, good. Good morning. Shall we start? Okay. Excellencies, dear friends, good morning again. Good to see all of you here. I was a bit worried that there wouldn't be this kind of turnout, but thank you to all of you for coming. It is my pleasure to see many of you gathered here today in Geneva for this year's Intersessional Meetings. I am thrilled to be here with you to celebrate our progress and together see how best we can resolve our challenges. We will need to ensure that we continue demonstrating this commitment going forward. I would not like to start these meetings without thanking my predecessor, Ambassador Tomiko Ichikawa of Japan, who spared no effort to take the convention forward last year and presided over a successful 22nd meeting of states parties. It was not an easy year, but we also had some great successes when we celebrated the Republic of Marshall Islands and the Kingdom of Tonga, taking that important step to join us as state parties. Dear colleagues, it is no secret that the convention has seen bad and better times. Despite occurrences that had potential to take us off track, I feel honored that the responsibility of presiding over the convention has been passed on to Zambia, and that I can be here with you today to weather the challenges and share better days. This convention has very noble objectives and has certainly done a lot for humanity. I am certain that all of you appreciate the importance of this convention and the important role we all have in ensuring its continued success. Before we proceed with our work, I want to stop briefly here and ask all of you to help me observe 1 minute of silence for all the victims and survivors of anti-personnel mines and their families. Thank you. Excellencies, colleagues, our progress under this convention has been tremendous, but the challenges ahead are mounting with new conflicts, the use of anti-personnel mines by some states, and the use of improvised anti-personnel mines by armed non-state actors. Last year, the convention faced defining challenges of our time, challenges never experienced before, nearly dampening the morale of the convention. But today, our morale is back, and we can certainly continue boasting about great successes. Thank you to Lebanon. On 1st May, Lebanon deposited their instrument of accession to the convention. This action has sent a clear and timely message to the world that the protection of civilians remains paramount. Most importantly, the move reinforces the international rejection of the use, production, and stockpiling of anti-personnel landmines under any circumstances. In this regard, allow me to please join me in welcoming Lebanon following their accession. We look forward to hearing from Lebanon sometime today. Allow me also to highlight the important milestone reached by Croatia in declaring itself mindfully. I also look forward to hearing from Croatia during the course of this week. As we enter the second year of implementation of the SIMRIP Action Plan, let us take stock of where we are. Let us use this week's meetings to look forward to matters that will need to be considered by all of us at the 23rd meeting of states parties, such as matters related to the establishment of the Voluntary Trust Fund, which we will turn to later this week. I'm looking forward to engagement during these informal meetings. One thing is for certain, we must continue to work together to ensure the successful implementation of the Convention. This Convention is too important, and we should not compromise with the norm the Convention has established. We are the keepers of this norm. Our efforts need to be sustained in both easy and difficult moments. Now I have the pleasure of offering the floor to Ambassador Julian Tony, Ambassador of Switzerland, to the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva as our host. Your Excellency, you have the floor. Yes, you can.
Good morning. Bonjour. Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Directeur, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs. En tant que représentant de l'État hôte, c'est avec un grand plaisir que je souhaite la bienvenue à Genève, à vous tous et à vous toutes, participants et participantes à ces réunions intersessions. Nous sommes particulièrement honorés d'accueillir à nouveau cette importante rencontre ici à Genève, rencontre essentielle au fonctionnement et à la mise en œuvre de la Convention sur l'interdiction des mines antipersonnelles. Je voudrais en tout premier lieu remercier la présidence zambienne de notre Convention et plus spécifiquement son Excellence, l'ambassadrice Eunice Tembo Luambia, pour son dévouement à cette tâche et son engagement sans faille. Je suis également particulièrement honoré de pouvoir m'exprimer devant cette Assemblée ce matin aux côtés du directeur du Centre international de déminage humanitaire de Genève. Madame la Présidente, chers collègues, notre Convention est la preuve vivante de l'impact que peut avoir le multilatéralisme lorsqu'il apporte une réponse effective à un problème global et aux conséquences humanitaires aiguës. Ces réunions intersessions s'inscrivent dans un contexte international marqué par des défis particuliers et multiples. Les normes humanitaires sur lesquelles notre Convention s'appuie et qu'elle promeut sont d'autant plus importantes en ces temps marqués par de multiples conflits armés, affectant les populations civiles en particulier. Notre Convention constitue un outil essentiel afin de protéger ces populations, non seulement lors des conflits armés, mais également suite à leur conclusion et afin d'en atténuer les conséquences. De réels succès sont à mentionner depuis l'Assemblée des États parties de décembre dernier. Je tiens en particulier à saluer la soumission par le Liban des instruments de ratification de la Convention, une décision remarquable en soi et qui plus est pour un État affecté par un conflit armé en cours. Cette décision est un signal fort qui démontre que la protection des civils contre les effets dévastateurs des mines antipersonnelles peut constituer une priorité absolue, même face à des considérations en matière de sécurité. La Suisse félicite ainsi le Liban pour cette décision importante qui intervient dans une période particulièrement ardue pour l'universalisation de notre Convention. Par ailleurs, la Croatie a officiellement annoncé avoir rempli ses obligations de déminage au titre de la Convention, se déclarant ainsi libre de mines antipersonnelles. Cette réalisation est une belle démonstration de ce qui est possible lorsqu'un État établit comme priorité la mise en œuvre de la Convention. Madame la Présidente, nous savons que l'environnement international est complexe et difficile. Divers développements, comme des retraits de la Convention, la publication d'intentions d'emploi ou de production de mines antipersonnelles, des rapports de leur utilisation dans différents contextes la mettent à l'épreuve. Dans de telles circonstances, il est plus important que jamais de réaffirmer notre engagement collectif en faveur de cet instrument remarquable à de nombreux titres et de préserver ce qui a été construit au cours des dernières décennies. L'acceptation des États parties de l'obligation de ne plus jamais utiliser les mines antipersonnelles, tout comme la mise en œuvre des dispositions de la Convention, qu'il s'agisse de la dépollution des zones minées, de la destruction des stocks ou de l'aide aux victimes, continue à produire des effets tangibles et positifs sur les populations civiles et le développement durable. La Suisse est résolue à faire tout son possible afin que la Convention puisse continuer à rayonner dans les meilleures conditions. Ceci y compris à travers son soutien à l'organisation des réunions intersessions. Je vous remercie encore une fois pour l'occasion qui m'a été donnée de vous adresser ces quelques mots et vous souhaite encore la bienvenue à Genève. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Misad Tocic, who joins us from Croatia, a former deminer, victim assistance practitioner, a strong advocate for fitness and sports, and member of the international campaign to ban landmines cluster munitions coalition, to offer some opening remarks. Misad, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning. My name is Mirsad Tokic. I am from Croatia. I'm a husband, a father, a landmine survivor, and a former deminer. For many years, I worked clearing mines. I knew the dangers. I had seen accidents. I had seen people injured and killed. Like every deminer, I went to work hoping to come home safely at the end of the day. On 27 March 2007, that did not happen. My team was clearing a minefield near the village of Nečven in Croatia. We believed there were many mines in the area and asked for a machine to help us. The machine did not come. Later that day, I stepped onto unsafe ground. There was an explosion. I lost part of my left leg. In a split second, my life changed. The months after the accident were difficult. There were operations, there was pain, there was recovery. There were questions about work, about my family, about my future. But I was not alone. Doctors, rehabilitation workers, friends, and other survivors helped me. Support for survivors is so important. Survivors need rehabilitation. Survivors need support from other survivors who understand the experience. People need the chance to work and support their families. They need to know they still have a place in their community. I know what it means to live with mines. I know what it means to fear them. And I know what it means when land becomes safe again. That is why Croatia completion means so much to me. When I was injured in 2007, many parts of Croatia were still contaminated. At times, it felt like the work would never end. Today, Croatia is mine-free. This did not happen quickly. It took many years. It took hard work. It took commitment and political will. Croatia shows that completion is possible. Even when the problem looks too big, it can be solved. I'm proud of what my country was able to do, and I hope other countries will soon follow its example. But removing the last mine is not the end of the story. Survivors are still here, families are still here. The effects of mine accidents can last a lifetime. And yet some countries are forgetting these lessons. Last year, 5 countries made a mistake. They left this treaty so they could use mines on their own land, mines that would make their people suffer. 2 of these countries now also plan to produce millions of mines. Mines that will surely take the lives or legs of many innocent people. And in Ukraine, still a state party, there is growing evidence of new use and even production. We should not sit silently and let this happen. Too much is at stake. As someone whose life was changed while a landmine, I want to say something very simple. Mines take lives. Mines do not save them. Mines will not stop a determined enemy, but they will stay on after wars end. Years later, they will still be there waiting for a farmer, a child, a shepherd, or a deminer. That is why this convention is important. That is why our work here matters so much. And that is why most of the world is still fully behind this convention. And it is why we are so happy to hear that Lebanon has joined. Despite a great threat from its neighbor, Lebanon chose to say no to landmines. The countries that withdrew said they need mines for self-defense, but Lebanon also needs to defend its people. They just want to do so smartly, without using an old, blind, and cruel weapon, without putting their children at risk. Congratulations, Lebanon, and welcome to this family of states committed to protecting people in war. In closing, Madam President, the ICBL asks all states to show the leadership we need to keep our treaty strong. We ask you all to speak out against any new production or use. We ask you to make sure no others leave and all states still outside the treaty join soon. And we ask you to increase efforts to fully respect the convention, whether you are an affected state, a donor, or other. Every mine cleared is one less danger. Every area released is one more community made safe. Every victim's right realized is a person empowered. And we are here this week to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saad, for sharing your experiences. We really appreciate your coming today to open this meeting, reminding us of the indiscriminate effect of landmines on civilians. Now allow me to offer the floor to Ambassador Tobias Priviltelli, Director of the GICHD, for his remarks. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you to Mir Saad for his very impressive testimony. It's an honor to speak here at the opening of the Intersessional in a very important time. I would like to thank Ambassador Temboluambia from Zambia for an excellent stewardship under the convention this year. And I would also like to thank Juan Carlos Ruan and his team for their constant work and dedication to the implementation and for an excellent cooperation between the ISUs and the GICHD. I'm also sending my warm words of welcome to Lebanon, which joined the convention on the 1st of May. Thank you so much. That's brilliant news. It shows that the country is able to protect civilians and strengthen national security at the same time. The accession of Lebanon is a powerful reaffirmation of the Convention's humanitarian purposes. I would like to join colleagues in congratulating Croatia for achieving the status of a mine-free country, for completing the obligations under Article 5. Madam President, the Anti-Personal Mine Ban Convention remains one of the most efficient and successful humanitarian instruments which have ever been negotiated. For nearly 3 decades, it has saved lives, it has reduced suffering, it has returned land to productive use. It supported survivors and it protected millions of civilians. It remains a powerful international norm. Therefore, the GICHD remains deeply concerned about withdrawals from the Convention and about recent announcement that landmines might be produced in Europe again, anti-personnel landmines. These developments risk undermining decades of collective progress. They come at a time of increasing humanitarian needs, challenges to the rules-based international order, and the rising numbers of explosive ordnance victims. The convention was a sensation. It mattered when it was adopted 29 years ago, but it still matters today. Madam President, I welcome the focus of this meeting on the implementation of our obligations and of our ambitions under the Siem Reap Action Plan. It's all about delivering to the benefit of affected countries, peoples and communities. We must continue to advance clearance efforts, investing in mine risk education and in victims assistance. We must ensure that countries affected possess the national capacities, systems and partnerships, also to manage residual contamination and to protect communities from harm. Effective implementation means to leave no one behind. Experience shows that the most efficient mine action is inclusive. We must understand the different needs, experiences, priorities of women, men, girls and boys, as well as persons with disabilities and affected communities. This is not just a matter of principle. It is essential to ensure that risks are properly understood and met accurately. To put it simple, inclusive approaches make mine action more efficient. Finally, implementation requires long-term investment and sustained resources. The GICHD welcomes the work undertaken to explore the feasibility of a voluntary trust fund and the commitments of states to identify new and creative ways of supporting affected countries. The GICHD is honored to host a small secretariat which elaborates innovative finance solutions for mine action. Madam President, Excellencies, the Convention has demonstrated that humanitarian action, international cooperation and political commitment can produce lasting results. As His Royal Highness Prince Mirit reminded us at the 22nd meeting of states, party complacency is not an option. The challenges remain significant. The lesson of the Convention is that progress cannot be taken for granted. We must continue. I wish all of you a productive and successful meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Tobias. We are very grateful to the GICHD's continued support and commitment to mine action. Excellencies, the intersessional meetings have always been an opportunity for us to share detailed information on progress and challenges, as well as our experience and expertise. May I remind you that these are informal meetings, so use this opportunity to have informal discussions and interventions. With this being said, it is time to start our work. As usual, we would ask that, should you want the floor, to please register with the Implementation Support Unit, indicating the specific agenda item as per the program. Remember that this year, the program of the intersessional meeting is different. We will begin each session with a panel discussion, and then when the panel discussions are over, the floor will then be open for thematic statements. In this regard, it's important that your statements are brief in order to offer everyone a chance to take the floor. Also, please recall that the Convention's office holders and the Implementation Support Unit are also there to engage with you concerning any outstanding obligation you have, including to support you in the submission of your Article 7 report, should you state by delayed in doing so. Finally, over the next 4 days, We will benefit from interpretation in 5 languages. I take this opportunity to thank interpreters in advance for their work. Should you have written statements, I would ask that you please ensure that the statement is received by the ISU, or you can email it well ahead of your presentation in order for the ISU to provide it to the interpreters to facilitate their work. Please note that should your colleagues in Capital want to follow the meetings, they can do so through Zoom with interpretation. We will now move on to the subject of universalization, and I invite to the stage the speakers that will join me during this first panel discussion so that we can get started. As I mentioned earlier, please recall that each thematic panel will begin with a panel followed by statements. So now we'll begin with a panel entitled Standing Up for International Humanitarian Law, Global Frameworks, and the Place of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, good morning once again. It is my pleasure now to welcome you to Agenda Item 2, our panel discussion. Which will be Standing Up for International Humanitarian Law, Global Frameworks, and the Place of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban. For now, I'll ask my colleagues to leave and allow the panelists to come to the stage.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you. Yeah, you can sit. I'll still call you. I think they can remove those ones.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank you so much for the invitation.
You're welcome. They were short. Okay. Are we all there? No. Okay. Good. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, once again, I wish to welcome all the panelists on the stage. We welcome your active participation with this panel. Over the past 2 years, it is evident that we have faced setbacks, withdrawals from this convention, and continued use of anti-personnel mines with devastating humanitarian consequences. Over the past few years, we've also seen a real surge in global initiatives aimed at strengthening international humanitarian law. IHL is setting clear limits on how wars are fought, protecting civilians. It also reduces suffering and helps preserve the foundations for recovery and peace. The SIMRIP Action Plan 2025 to 2029 reminds us that our commitment to this convention must remain strong, coordinated, and visible. Today's conversation is about exactly that. How we reinforce the Convention's place within the broader IHL landscape. We are very fortunate to have with us a group of speakers who bring deep experience and different perspectives. May I now introduce the panelists. We have Her Excellency Caroline Ziadi, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Lebanon here in Geneva. You're welcome. We have Caroline Melanie Rigbal, Chief of Service, UNODA, Geneva. We have Karen Jabri, Director of Programs, Interparliamentary Union. We have Laurel Gizel, Head of the Arms and Conduct of Hostilities Unit, ICRC. We have Tama Gabonik, Director, ICBL, CMC. And lastly, but not the last, we have His Excellency Ambassador Alexander Menti, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Austria. Thank you all for being here, and we're looking forward to hearing from each one of you. Before we start, let me briefly frame our discussion. The SIMRIP Action Plan places renewed emphasis on three things: bringing more states on board, ensuring universal respect for the Convention's norms, and speaking clearly and collectively when these norms are violated. Today, we want to explore how global IHL initiatives can help us advance these goals, and how each community represented here plays a role: diplomats, parliamentarians, civil society, and international organizations. As I mentioned, despite our setbacks, we can boast about progress in this convention. The AP Mind-Band Convention remains the best performing convention of our time, with over 70% membership of the world. With this in mind, allow me now to welcome our first speaker with a tremendous round of applause, who is going to share with us the key reasoning behind Lebanon's accession to the convention during these difficult times. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Good morning. صباح الخير. Allow me to greet you in Lebanese. صباح الخير means good morning. I wanted to start by thanking two amazing women for their leadership: the former president of the state party, the ambassador of Japan, and the current one, the ambassador of Zambia. Your leadership is tremendous and exemplary, so thank you. I also wanted to thank Mirsad from Croatia for his welcoming and warm welcoming and encouragement for Lebanon's decision. And in our turn, I would like to commend Croatia for meeting its obligations under Article 5. Madam Chair, it is an honor for Lebanon to address this intersessional meeting in Geneva, a city that symbolizes humanitarian action, multilateralism, and the enduring commitment of the international community to the protection of human life and dignity. Today, Lebanon reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the humanitarian principles and objectives of the Ottawa Convention, and wishes to share its perspective on the significance of its ratification at a particularly challenging moment for the international community in general and for Lebanon in particular. For those who are asking why the Lebanese ratification now, as the President mentioned, Lebanon deposited its ratification instrument in New York on the 1st of May 2026. Why? Because for Lebanon, anti-personnel mines are not an abstract security concept, nor a legacy of the distant past. They remain a daily humanitarian reality, today more than ever. Decades of conflict, compounded by renewed hostilities and continued Israeli attacks on Lebanese territory, have left extensive areas contaminated by landmines and explosive remnants of war. These hazards continue to claim lives and cause injuries, restrict access to agricultural land, hinder economic recovery, and prevent affected communities from living in safety and dignity. And the decision of Lebanon is to ensure the secure, dignified, and safe living for our people. That's why we joined. Behind every contaminated field is a family deprived of its livelihood, and today we have many of them in Lebanon. Behind every casualty is a life permanently altered, and Mirsad was right. Behind every mine that remains in the ground lies a continuing threat to peace, development, and human security. It is precisely because Lebanon knows these realities firsthand that our commitment to the humanitarian goals of the Convention has never been merely declaratory. Even before ratification, and I know many in the room are fully aware of that, Lebanon consistently acted in accordance with the Convention's humanitarian spirit. Lebanon has never produced anti-personnel mines and has invested considerable national efforts in reducing their humanitarian impact through clearance operations, risk education, victim assistance, and support for affected communities. These efforts are simply deeply rooted in conviction that no security consideration can diminish the value of human life, and no civilian should continue to suffer the consequences of weapons long after conflicts have ended. So this is our way to say no to the continued impact of the anti-personnel mine. Madam President, one of Lebanon's achievements in this field has been the establishment and development of the Lebanon Mine Action Center, and you will hear from all of them during this week. Under the leadership of the Lebanese Armed Forces and in close partnership with the United Nations, donor countries, international organizations, and most importantly, our civil society, ALMAC has become a model of national ownership and effective coordination. Its works has transformed contaminated land into productive land, restored access to livelihoods, enhanced public safety, and brought hope back to communities that had lived for years under the shadow of explosive hazards. Equally important has been Lebanon's commitment to placing victims and survivors at the center of its mine action policies. Mine action, Madam President, is not only about removing explosives from the ground. It is about restoring dignity, creating opportunities, promoting inclusion, and ensuring that survivors can participate fully and equally in society. Lebanon also wishes to pay tribute to the indispensable contribution of civil society organizations. Their dedication, expertise, and close engagement with affected communities have strengthened risk education, supported survivors, and ensured that humanitarian principles remain at the heart of our collective efforts. Madam President, allow me to join previous speakers in highlighting the importance of the Ottawa Convention. This convention remains one of the most remarkable achievements of humanitarian disarmament. It transformed a humanitarian concern into a global norm and obligation. It demonstrated that the protection of civilians can unite states, and we need unity today. International organization and civil society around a common purpose. And it proved that international law can save lives. Today, however, as you rightly mentioned, the Convention faces a more complex and uncertain international environment. We are witnessing the resurgence of armed conflicts, increasing geopolitical tensions, and renewed discussions regarding the military utility of anti-personnel mind. These developments pose serious challenges to the universalization of the Convention and risk undermining decades of humanitarian progress. Our ratification instrument is just our contribution to put an end to these reverse actions. At such moment, Lebanon's decision to ratify carries particular significance. Our ratification reflects Lebanon's confidence in multilateralism, in international humanitarian law, and in the value of a rules-based international order. It reflects our belief that humanitarian principles must not become casualties of evolving security doctrines. And it reflects our conviction that strengthening international norms is not a luxury reserved for time of peace, but a prerequisite, especially in times of instability and conflict. Therefore, Lebanon views its ratification not only as a legal step, but as a reaffirmation of a collective responsibility, a responsibility to protect civilians, our civilians in particular, a responsibility to preserve humanitarian norms, and a responsibility to ensure that future generations do not inherit the deadly legacies of today's conflicts. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, while the Convention has achieved remarkable progress, many of you mentioned that much work remains ahead. Universalization is not merely a procedural objective, it is a humanitarian imperative. Every additional state that joined the Convention strengthened the norm against anti-personnel mines and brings us closer to a world where civilians no longer live under their threat. At the same time, universalization must be matched by implementation. Mine-affected countries continue to face immense challenges. Contamination persists, new explosive threats emerge, and humanitarian needs often exceed available resources. For this reason, Lebanon calls upon the international community to renew and strengthen its commitment in several key areas. First, sustained and predictable financial assistance remains essential. Long-term support enables mine action programs to maintain operational capacities and deliver lasting results. Second, technical cooperation and innovation must continue to be promoted. Advances in survey methodology, information management, clearance technologies, and victim assistance can significantly enhance national efforts and accelerate progress. Third, support for survivors must remain at the center of our work. Medical care, rehabilitation, psychosocial support, education, vocational training, and economic inclusion are not optional components of mine action. They are fundamental obligations. Fourth, investment in national institutions and local expertise is critical to ensuring sustainability, resilience, and national ownership. Finally, we must continue to recognize humanitarian mine action as an essential contribution to peace building, sustainable development, recovery, and the protection of civilians. Madam President, Lebanon's experience demonstrates that progress is possible, even under the most difficult circumstances. The resilience of affected communities, the dedication of Al-Maq, the commitment of civil society, and the solidarity of international partners have enabled Lebanon to move forward despite persistent challenges. Yet, our work is far from completed. At a time when humanitarian norms are being tested and when the universalization of the Convention faces growing obstacles, we must remain steadfast in defending the principles that brought us together. We must all stand for the universalization of the Convention. And I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those thoughtful reflections. We are extremely happy to have Lebanon as a states party to the convention. Thank you very much. Now, the United Nations plays a central role in promoting and enforcing international humanitarian law by passing binding Security Council resolutions and authorizing peacekeeping missions to protect civilians. It also plays a critical role in our collective multilateral efforts to strengthen IHL. It is now my pleasure to offer the floor to the United Nations for their views and their recent efforts in strengthening international humanitarian law. Melanie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to everyone. I join the voices of congratulations to Lebanon for its accession and to Croatia for declaring itself mine-free. These are very important steps for this convention and for this family, and I think that we must all take a moment to celebrate and understand their significance. I also want to thank you, Madam President, for putting at the first order of the day the issue of universalization as well as the importance of international humanitarian law. It's no secret that our instruments over the past 2 years have been under extensive strain, and that this convention itself has also faced a number of challenges. Although I must say with this morning's news and celebration, it gives us hope that this convention really stands by its principles. For the United Nations, as the guardians of the international treaties and humanitarian disarmament instruments, of course, we have found the last 24 months particularly challenging. But as with every aspect that has characterized this convention and this community, it is a challenge that we have taken on collectively. And I think that that is one of the key elements of the last 24 months, is that despite the challenges, we were able to come together as an international community and raise our voices against the erosion of these norms and wanting to ensure that the support could be really pushed forward. I think that this is one of the strongest attributes that the humanitarian disarmament community has, is that we have the ability to all speak together. and to use our voices from a place of strength. So we saw that the United Nations took on specific roles, while the international civil society movements did others. The presidencies and the mechanisms of the conventions all had very specific roles in understanding and finding solutions. For the United Nations, what we had was the launch of the Secretary General's campaign, which was the campaign to strengthen humanitarian disarmament instruments and mine action. It was launched over a period of about 7 months with zero budget, so it was a very quick and tiny effort, but I think with a mighty impact. The convention and the campaign focused on 3 main pillars. One was to reassert political commitment and to work with state parties to ensure that the commitment to these international humanitarian instruments did not further dwindle. And I'm happy to say that beyond the countries that had announced their departures and suspensions, we did not have any further movement along this. I'm not saying that this is good. This is clearly an obstacle that our community has lived, but we were able to prevent further states from making that difficult decision. We were also able to strengthen the connection between all of these instruments, whether it was the Ottawa Convention, the Oslo Convention, the WIPA Declaration, as well as the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, and ensure that every forum that we had to discuss these issues was further emboldened, further empowered, that there were communal messages made by states, but also by international organizations, and that the support that goes behind the scenes was also forthcoming. So that was the first pillar, to reaffirm political commitment. The second was to try to reinvigorate the United Nations system to speak under one voice and to really push for mine action and the well-being of the humanitarian disarmament instruments. And I think that that's the pillar that we succeeded the best at. We were able to agree on common messaging to bolster and highlight the work that each of the agencies were able to do within the mine action agenda, and draw the connections to the wider pillars and priorities of the United Nations, whether they be peace and security or development. And I think that that was very, very well done. We were able to ensure that there was not further erosion of funding to these pillars, and to really strengthen our voice and to speak as one. And then the third pillar of the campaign really looked at outreach to the public and to the wider audience. This is one where we didn't succeed as well as we should, and I am very hopeful and grateful that the UN family is willing to continue with the work of the campaign in light of the 30th anniversary of the Secretary General's of the Ottawa Convention, and to further our efforts collectively to reach common messaging. One of the reasons why we were not as successful in the public outreach was a lack of resources and funding and ability to mobilize a wider civil society and our UN offices abroad to engage with the local communities. And I think that this is also something, one of the lessons learned that we have as an international community, is that for so long this convention has been a beacon of hope, a success story, that we forgot to do some of the prevention work to ensure that we wouldn't fall privy to some type of erosion. It was something that we would never have been able to predict 10 years ago, and so I think that we focus so much on continuing to celebrate and push for clearance and survivor assistance, which is of course the core being of these conventions, that we forgot to invest from all fronts, from state parties, from international organizations, but also civil society. We forgot to invest in our parliamentarians and the messages that they have to bring to the forefront in support of these conventions. We forgot to invest in our youth communities as a collective to be able to prevent such erosion. So as we embark on the 30th anniversary and the celebrations, it is certainly the hope of the United Nations that we will be able to put a little bit more emphasis and resources to mobilizing youth engagement, civil society engagement, and parliamentary engagement. So panels such as these are extremely important to be able to reiterate these messages. I don't think it's a difficult sell. We already have 30 years of successes and numerous countries that have been declared mine-free, survivors that have been assisted, prevention that has taken place. And even though there is still a lot of work, this convention, its successes speak for themselves. I think we will also have to be much more mindful as to who delivers what messages in these public outreach campaigns. In this first campaign last year, there was a lot of behind-the-scene messaging, particularly when it came to military utility. And there was a very good reason for that. And it was because we felt, as guardians of this convention, that the military utility dialogue and the arguments that had been made 25 years ago still stood. And we still believe that. We still believe that what was true 25 years ago, that landmines are obsolete and that the humanitarian impact far outweigh their military utility, could not be voiced in a coherent message that would really change or sway our colleagues. So we chose to not do this in a public forum, but rather to use diplomacy, bilateral, and to use the voices of our states to really pass those messages. And I think that the fact that we didn't see further withdrawals has helped. But we still need to do a lot of messaging. With the fact that we have production coming on, now it is our role to also strengthen those messages both publicly and through enhanced diplomacy. But we'll also still have to continue to weigh whose voice is louder and more coherent for what messages. And so for the United Nations, you can count on us, Madam President, to continue sustained efforts, joint messaging, efforts to ensure that our resources are put forth and that we continue to support not only the humanitarian disarmament instruments and international humanitarian law at large, but also mine action in general. And we look forward to working with everyone here on the panel, but all of the states parties and the very important civil society organizations that join us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie, for your insightful remarks, highlighting the importance of multilateral cooperation and respect for IHL. In addition to the other forgets, I think we also forgot to invest in ensuring that no state withdrew from the convention. Thank you for all your efforts, and we'll continue to engage with yourselves. Parliamentarians play a crucial role in strengthening respect for international humanitarian law, including by translating its principles into national legislation, oversight, and budgetary decisions. IPU has been a great partner of the Convention, especially in mobilizing support for universalization of the Convention. It is now my pleasure to have you with us, Karen, to share with us the critical role that your organization has played in strengthening IHL and universalization. It's my pleasure to offer you the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for giving me the floor. And before beginning, I would like to as well congratulate Lebanon and Croatia and thank them for the very strong and hopeful message that they are conveying to us today. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure for me to be here today and take part in this panel discussion on behalf of the Interparliamentary Union, the IPU. From the outset, I would like to thank you again, Madam President, and the Implementation Support Unit of the APMBC for inviting the IPU to take part in those discussions and for opening a space to bring the voice of the global parliamentary community to debates and efforts on anti-personal mines, humanitarian disarmament, and international humanitarian law. The IPU is the global organization of national parliaments, which brings together 183 national parliaments from around the world. It facilitates parliamentary diplomacy and empowers parliaments and parliamentarians to promote peace, democracy, and sustainable development across borders. As part of this goal, promoting respect for IHL has been at the core of our work. The IPU has a history of promoting IHL among its member parliaments by advocating, through its resolutions and other political outcomes, the importance of adhering to IHL treaties, and through its specialized bodies by providing expertise and technical support to its members. In the case of the APMBC, already back in 1997, even before the adoption of the convention, the IPU was holding debates at its assemblies and adopting resolutions calling for a comprehensive legal framework to put an end to the use of anti-personal mines. This was one of the organization's top priorities, and I can safely say that it is thanks to the political commitment of many member parliaments and individual parliamentarians that the convention came into force so quickly and has had so much impact. Since then, IHL and the APMBC have remained a priority within the IPU, especially under the leadership of a specialized committee dedicated to this issue. In collaboration with the ISU and the ICRC, this committee has continued to raise awareness of parliamentarians and provided technical expertise to the parliamentary community on the universalization and national implementation of the convention. And indeed, universalization, let alone implementation and compliance, cannot be achieved without political commitment and political action. And the involvement of a multitude of key stakeholders is required, each having a specific role to play. And let me say it clearly, parliamentarians and parliaments are among these key stakeholders. Parliamentarians can advocate and lobby for ratification or accession to the convention, adopt the necessary legislation, ensure adequate financial support, and reach out to constituents, dispelling doubts and building support. As we are speaking here today about global frameworks and initiatives to strengthen IHL, allow me to turn to a very concrete and recent example led by and developed for parliaments. I refer to the Geneva Declaration on upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crisis, which was adopted at the 151st IPU Assembly in Geneva last October. In times of crisis and instability, the Geneva Declaration serves as the IPU leading political instrument on IHL, whereby the global parliamentary community reaffirms its commitment to uphold and promote respect for IHL. The declaration includes not only an express reference to the APMBC, but also a parliamentary call to pursue efforts towards accession to, ratification for IHL treaties, as well as ensuring the full incorporation of IHL into domestic legislation. This declaration is a true example of the potential that parliaments have to contribute to respect to IHL norms, both at the international and domestic levels. And this is why I would like to emphasize again, the role played by parliaments and parliamentarians is critical to accelerate universalization and ensure national implementation of the convention. And with that, I would like to end by sharing 4 examples of actions identified. First, parliaments are uniquely positioned positions to ensure that there is political will, and we all mentioned it, to respect IHL norms such as the APMBC. As opinion leaders and representatives of the people, parliamentarians can use their influence to shape public understanding of the risks related to the use of anti-personal mines and reaffirm the relevance of the convention with the goal to combat permissive interpretations and the dehumanization discourse we see in conflict today. Second, they can exercise parliamentary oversight and engage in a dialogue with governments on the lack of adhesion or implementation of IHL treaties, or discuss in relation to decisions on the use of armed force and arms transfer, including anti-personnel mines. They can carry out ad hoc inquiries or hold hearings with the goal to hold governments accountable for effective respect of international humanitarian law. Third, they can ensure that budgets and adequate resources are earmarked to support efforts and initiatives related to respect for IHL. We all know that resources are at the heart of effective enforcement. And fourth, parliamentary leaders can add their voice in support of the APMBC by engaging in interparliamentary processes and discussions such as at the IPU or related multilateral processes. For instance, the Parliament of Tonga, through its diplomatic engagement, was instrumental in the country's accession to the APMBC in 2025. Following the Parliament's engagement in discussions on universalization at the IPU, the Parliament took the lead internally in pushing for accession. The government appointed a parliamentarian to represent Tonga in APMBC meetings, which later led to Tonga's accession to the convention. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate that parliaments and parliamentarians are part and parcel of the necessary architecture and dynamic required to stand up for IHL norms and ensure universalization, implementation, and compliance with the APMBC. At the IPU, we will continue to facilitate and support dialogue and cooperation between parliaments and the international community to work together towards strengthening IHL and achieving a mine-free world. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Parliamentarians are truly essential partners in universalization and national implementation and policy advocacy. We look forward to a continued collaboration with yourselves. Meanwhile, the ICRC is the guardian and promoter of IHL, responsible for ensuring that the rules of war remain understood, respected, adapted to contemporary conflicts. It is now my pleasure to pass the floor to Laurent from the ICRC to share with us their perspective and feedback from their global initiative to strengthen IHL. Laurent, you have the floor. Thank you for coming.
Excellencies, distinguished panelists, dear colleagues. On behalf of the International Committee of the Red Cross, I would like to thank Her Excellency Ambassador Eunice Luambia, President of the 23rd Meeting of State Parties, and the ISU for inviting us to address the pressing issues the Convention faces. Over 130 armed conflicts are raging today, twice as many as 15 years ago. Wars are lasting longer, growing more complex, trapping entire generations. Despite a global consensus supporting international humanitarian law, adherence to even the most basic humanitarian norms remains shockingly insufficient in today's war zones. As my colleagues see every day in our work around the world, the human, social, economic, and environmental costs of these violations are unsustainable. In parallel, military spending has grown to extraordinary levels. Many states appear to be reorienting their policies and capabilities towards preparing for major conflicts in ways not seen for decades. Yet the conclusion of the first special session of the General Assembly devoted to disarmament, held almost half a century ago in 1978, remains valid. More weapons means less security. To address some of these contemporary challenges, in 2024, Brazil, China, France, Jordan, Kazakhstan, South Africa, and the ICRC launched the global initiative to galvanize political commitments to international humanitarian law that the President just mentioned. More than 100 states have now joined the initiative, demonstrating a broad recognition that I must remain at the center of political discourse, conflicts, peace, and security. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention is one of the most powerful examples of a humanitarian disarmament treaty grounded in IHL and in the imperative to prevent unacceptable harm. Its strength lies not only in prohibiting specific weapons, but in the broader humanitarian architecture it created. Clearance, risk education, stockpile destructions, victim assistance, cooperation and assistance, and norm building beyond the state parties. For nearly 3 decades, the Convention has saved countless lives, prevented untold suffering, and transformed global norms. Thanks to the commitment of its 162 state parties, more than 52 million stockpiled anti-personnel mines were destroyed. And last year alone, state parties reported releasing more than 1,100 square kilometers of contaminated land. Let me here also congratulate Croatia for having announced in March the clearance of all known mines area in the country. Every mine removed is a life saved and a livelihood secured. Most importantly, these efforts have established an important stigma against the use of these weapons. Anti-personnel mines have no place in today's world. In this regard, I would like to warmly congratulate Lebanon. As Her Excellency Ambassador Caroline Ziadeh just recalled, Lebanon acceded to the Mine Ban Convention on the 1st of May this year, during an ongoing armed conflict. The conflict was not seen as a reason to delay. It instead became a reason to act. The ambassador made clear the message that Lebanon conveys through this decision. Protecting civilians is not conditional and cannot be postponed until after the conflict. It is most relevant precisely when hostilities rage. This is when reaffirming what is unacceptable matters. It is in the same vein that Lebanon also joined the global IHL initiative to demonstrate political commitments towards this body of law. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot deny that the Convention is currently under stress. Withdrawals, purported suspension, the continued or renewed use of anti-personnel mines are all matters of serious concerns. Over the last couple of years, together with the broader Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, we have reinforced our work to promote the Convention publicly and in bilateral dialogue with states. We notably highlighted that the justification for using anti-personnel mines tend to be divorced from battlefield realities and overlook the appalling impact of these treacherous weapons. In such times, endeavors such as the Global IHL Initiative help reinforce the political environment in which the Convention norms are defended, promoted, and universalized. The initiative helps underscore that adherence to humanitarian disarmament obligations is part and parcel of complying with IHL. It reduces suffering in war and preserves the conditions for recovery and peace. Within the global initiative, the IHL and peace work streams is particularly relevant. During the consultations, states reaffirmed the importance to prioritize humanitarian disarmament both in time of peace and during armed conflict. They also looked at how respect for IHL can help preserve pathway to peace before, during, and after armed conflict. In this regard, weapons contamination and explosive remnants of war are not only immediate protection concerns, they also obstruct return, livelihood, access to essential services, reconciliations, and long-term recovery. Mine action has a direct connection to peace building and post-conflict stabilization. The overall aim of the Global IHL Initiative and the Siem Reap Anchor Action Plan renewed emphasis on universalization, observance on the Convention's norm, and condemnation of violations are fully aligned. Both seeks to translate legal commitment into political will and practical action. Let me underscore that the Convention's enduring relevance depends on sustained leadership by state parties, including affected states, as well as civil society, parliamentarians, and humanitarian actors. Universalization is not only about formal accession, it is also about reinforcing the stigma against anti-personnel mines and ensuring that no actors sees their use as acceptable or inevitable. Your unequivocal condemnations of any use of anti-personnel mines by anyone, anywhere, is more critical than ever. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at a time when humanitarian norms are being tested, the Mine Ban Convention reminds us that progress is possible. The Global IHL Initiative seeks to help recreate that political momentum more broadly, to ensure that respect for IHL, including humanitarian disarmament, remains a shared priority. A priority on the battlefield, a priority in the political decisions that shape how wars are fought and how peace remains possible. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laurent, for your work, the work of the ICRC and the partnership. Let us continue to engage for the success of the convention. Thank you. I now wish to turn to ICBL, a civil society organization that has made a huge contribution to the success of this convention. This convention owes a lot to ICBL and the people that have worked tirelessly to ensure that the prohibition against anti-personnel landmines became a reality. In this regard, I'm happy to invite Tama to speak to the role of ICBL in the promotion of IHL and the universalization of the convention. Tama, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, for those very kind words. Excellencies, colleagues, almost 30 years ago, we achieved the impossible. We took a weapon in active use by armies worldwide, and we banned it, without exceptions, loopholes, or reservations. We succeeded not because there was no more risk of conflict on this planet, but because we proved to the world that even if conflicts arise, anti-personnel mines are indiscriminate and inhumane weapons that should never be used again under any circumstances. We established not just a convention, but a model of humanitarian disarmament with lasting positive impact on the broad framework of norms to protect civilians. And how did we do so? Largely because of three factors that should inspire our work today as we face the unprecedented challenges laid out by previous speakers, and which I'll come back to. First, we used evidence-based, human-centered advocacy. Our member organizations brought solid evidence of the horrific impact of anti-personnel mines in conflicts on every continent. We shared this deeply troubling data, as well as the stories and testimonies of survivors and others whose daily lives were affected by mines, to mobilize the public and to persuade decision makers to join our cause. And we succeeded in shifting the narrative around landmines from traditional security concerns to one of human security, where the safety and well-being of civilians was given top priority. Second, we benefited from bold, steadfast leadership. Several individuals, both in civil society and governments, played a pivotal role in bringing our dream to reality. They set the bar high, deciding only a total ban would suffice, and they defended this goal against all attempts to weaken it. And even when the pressure came from their own allies or other powerful countries, they held firm, knowing that alliances can withstand disagreements, even on security-related matters. Third, we established strong partnerships across communities and sectors. Internally, the ICBL grew from its 6 original organizations to a global coalition of hundreds of members working tirelessly towards a unified goal. But strong as we were, we could not have achieved our goals without a close partnership with a core group of governments, the United Nations, the ICRC, and many others. For almost 30 years, we continued along this path, making slow and steady progress, building up a gold standard in humanitarian disarmament and a model for other instruments, until late 2024, when our mighty tower of civilian protection began to receive blow after blow, cracking its protective walls and shaking us to the core. Even before then, we were horrified to see Russia's massive use of mines in its brutal war on Ukraine and the massive suffering that has resulted. Then in late 2024, we saw the transfer of AP mines to Ukraine. 2025 started with the announcements by 5 states parties of their intention to withdraw. We saw sharp cuts to life-saving mine clearance and victim assistance funding by the world's biggest donor. And we ended with Ukraine trying to suspend its membership during wartime. And now we see Poland and Finland have announced plans to produce millions of mines, creating a threat to their people and civilians anywhere in the world from a new proliferation of mines on the global market. These decisions, individually and collectively, represent an unprecedented challenge, both to the Convention and to the broader set of humanitarian norms to protect civilians in conflict. We have grieved for the damage done, but now it's time to move our work forward again, using the lessons of our early days to repair the harm and rebuild positive momentum. So let me outline those lessons again. First, we need to use evidence and human-centered advocacy to rebuild awareness of why landmines were banned in the first place. We need to use today's social media tools to inform young people, parents, and politicians about the human toll of landmines so that more people understand why mines should never be used again. And we need to focus on evidence. So when some claim that mines will make the people safer, we ask for their evidence, and we provide proof to the contrary. Second, we need a new generation of bold leadership. We need all states parties to speak out in defense of the Convention and its norms, to stigmatize landmines, and oppose use, production, and transfers by anyone under any circumstances, even, like in the 1990s, if this means disagreeing with an ally. Leadership, as Lebanon nicely laid out, is also needed at the domestic level to prioritize implementing the Convention more efficiently so that its impact continues to be felt worldwide. And finally, we need continued support for our long-standing partnerships. As mentioned by the President, we greatly appreciate this recognition. The ICBL and its membership have been at the center of the Convention's work since the beginning, and we remain a committed partner. So we ask you to continue working with us closely, creatively, constructively to effect positive change. And we couldn't have asked for a better way to reboot our efforts than welcoming Lebanon as the newest state party. Lebanon has carefully examined the evidence against mines and decided that they did not want or need them for their defense, given their terrible humanitarian impact. It has shown tremendous leadership by joining the treaty in the midst of ongoing conflict. And as it is done with cluster munitions, we can count on Lebanon to continue partnering with donors, clearance operators, and campaigners to improve the safety of its populations. Croatia's clearance completion also exemplifies national ownership and determination that are at the center of the Convention's success. Congratulations to Lebanon, congratulations to Croatia. In closing, Madam President, I would like to end by briefly introducing you to a campaign that we are working on to relaunch our efforts. We're working on it with Humanity and Inclusion to rebuild positive momentum on the Mine Ban Treaty. I wonder if someone could put the slide that's in front of us up on the screen. There we go. Thank you. So as you can see in this photo, we have taken a replica of the ICBL's 1999 Nobel Peace Prize that was given in honor of our contribution to the Mine Ban Treaty's adoption. And we have carved out pieces to show the recent damage done to our common achievement. In the lead up to the 30th anniversary of both the convention and the Nobel Peace Prize, later next year, we're asking states to take action, to take visible steps to help put the pieces back together and to show the continued strength of our treaty. At the end of next year, we hope to celebrate various steps you have taken, such as bringing on a new state party or speaking out to prevent use or production, or making solid progress on an implementation task. We challenge you all to find creative ways to restore the integrity of the convention, move us forward, and use evidence, leadership, and partnership to protect the broader fabric of laws protecting civilians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tama, for your strong advocacy and for your passion for the protection of civilians, and also for reminding us of the power of the civil society. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you panelists for your perspectives and your efforts in this regard. But before we end this panel,
You forgot me.
no, I haven't.
Okay,
Before, I didn't forget you. But before we end this panel, allow the delegates to intervene, I would like to invite my colleague, Ambassador Alexander of Austria, to speak last, to wrap up things for us. Ambassador, as a young Austrian diplomat, you worked on disarmament and humanitarian issues at the same time when the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention was being negotiated. Austria also played a leading role in the Ottawa process, hosting key preparatory meetings and championing a strong humanitarian treaty text. Please share with us your experiences, perspectives, and the role of your country in this regard. And thank you for joining us. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good morning. It's a big honor for me to be part of this distinguished panel, and I would like to express my thanks for having been invited here. As you said, my country was part of the core group that helped to push the treaty over the line. And I was also involved in my time here in Geneva very much in the early phase of implementation. And I would like to make a few points on this. So when I started working here in Geneva in 2000, this was the time between the first and the second meeting of states parties. And the challenge at the time was to translate the dynamic process that had led to the negotiation of the treaty into a process of implementing the treaty, into a process that would achieve the objectives of the treaty. So for the norm on these weapons and of course to also on the other key objectives of the treaty. We have to remember that the intersessional process was established at the time. It was done in a very cooperative way, where the meetings were chaired by states, by donor countries and mine-affected states. It was built on very close cooperation with civil society, with the ICRC. The sponsorship program was established to help that the right people would come to these meetings. So all these aspects which we now consider as being the gold standard of how we should deal with these kind of treaties, all that was established in the context of the Mine Ban Treaty. The highlight for me personally was the preparation for the first review conference in 2004, which was called the Nairobi Summit on a Mine-Free World, and I was in charge of the action plan. And also the action plan of the first review conference of this treaty became the blueprint of actions plans in other treaties. This was really an extremely inspiring work. So based on my personal experience and my background, I would really just like to make 2 points, because I realize I'm the last speaker, and of course many extremely important points have already been made by the other panelists. So the 2 points I want to make, the first one is that I think it's important to go back to basics, to what are the key human security arguments on why the Mine-Ban Treaty was negotiated in the first place. I think it's extremely important to remember that, given the negative trends that we see today. And the key argument was the juxtaposition of the security arguments in favor of anti-personnel mines, that these weapons have a military utility, to juxtapose this with the arguments of what the impact of these weapons would be, the impact these weapons would have on affected communities, from the immediate harm to the long-term impact. So what is the perceived military utility of these weapons against the indiscriminate harm and the violence and the economic and social devastation caused by such weapons, also long after the conflict has ended? And these arguments have been discussed at length in the 1990s. And of course, some of the militaries didn't want to give up these weapons in the 1990s, but the conclusion was very clear, based on facts and based on the tragic experiences of many countries and many conflicts, that the military utility argument of anti-personnel landmines simply do not stand up to scrutiny when measured against the human security impact that these weapons have. So they are indiscriminate weapons that have devastating short and long-term impact, and they are incompatible with international humanitarian law. So the case for them being prohibited through the treaty was that they are simply unacceptable, and because the security calculation of having these weapons does not hold neither in the short nor in the long run. So the prohibition of these weapons was therefore not merely a legal, normative, and moral argument, but it was based on a significant and comprehensive assessment of security. So what kind of security we're talking about, and security for whom? And of course, this is human security. So we see today the re-emergence of arguments about the military utility of anti-personnel landmines, and it's mostly, of course, because some states use these mines in the most horrendous and indiscriminate way. And the argument goes that if one is confronted with such possible opponents, one needs to be ready to do whatever it takes, even using indiscriminate weapons such as anti-personnel landmines as well. And of course, we see this in the discussions on the withdrawals from the Mine-Ban Treaty. So I would make the point, I think it's really important that we understand that these are, of course, very difficult questions, even dilemmas. But irrespective whether or not a state is a party or not to the convention, anti-personnel landmines remain indiscriminate weapons because they are indiscriminate in the way they operate, and that should simply remain unacceptable. And of course, in addition, the security and military utility calculation of these weapons doesn't hold up. So I think we need to continue or return to having this basic argument, the case for the convention that was made at the time when the treaty was adopted. And I agree, maybe we dropped the ball on this a bit, because these arguments remain as valid today as they were then. So they are based on facts and on lots of experiences from armed conflicts in the past. So it's not a fair weather convention. I think that's very important to be discarded when we are dealing with a more complex security environment. The arguments for human security are strong and should be defended and should be upheld. The second point I want to make is that the Anti-Personnel Mine-Ban Convention was understood at the time and it was conceived at the time as an avant-garde way of dealing with international relations, a role model of how the international community should cooperate and should aim to address global challenges of global concern. The convention represents a more democratic and more inclusive way of dealing with global issues. It gives agencies to more states. It gives agency to civil society organizations. It's an approach that's based on partnership and cooperation between states that have experienced landmines and states that have not, as well as with civil society actors. It puts the rights of affected communities and victims at the center, and it's firmly based on the principle of human security. And it was, of course, the first international disarmament treaty to do that. And at today's environment, at today's situation, we see that these principles are very much challenged. We see a retraction from human security approach and human security understanding, even discourse, to a more militarized approach to security. And I think we need to ask ourselves if this is the direction that we want to go to, or is it not better to refocus again on a broader understanding of security? So, of course, the developments we see are very negative from the perspective of the vast majority of states that rely on international law and international instruments. And the Mine Ban Treaty, I think, therefore has a relevance that goes even much beyond the landmine issue, as important as it is, of course, because it is a model for a positive agenda and for cooperation and partnership based on human security and international law. And this is very much at stake at the moment. So it's worth defending. So I look at this treaty also as something that is a hugely important symbol and counter-model to many of the negative developments that we see today, especially, as I said, for small and medium-sized countries who have a vital interest in creating and maintaining international law. And as much as this is under threat today, it is worth focusing on it and defending on it. So the Mine Ban Treaty, with its history, with its humanitarian goals, and with its focus on human security, is an important front line of this discussion right now. And in this context, I just want to also reiterate how significant the decision is from that we now can count Lebanon as one of our states parties, and also the fact that Croatia has fulfilled its implementation of Article 5. Sorry. So I'll leave it at that. These are, I think, the two points harking back in a way to the historical experience from when the Mine Ban Treaty was negotiated. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing your experiences, and I hope that you will stay with us for as long as you can to share with us in more detail about your experiences on mine action. Thank you to all the speakers, but I would now like to open the floor for brief interventions from delegations, international organizations, and civil society. You are free and encouraged to pose a question or questions, observations to our speakers, and to share their reflections. Please put your nameplate up if you need to speak. But if you have a national statement on universalization, I ask that you wait until we come to the agenda item on universalization after this panel. At this point, I have a very short list of speakers. And if you need to speak, please, as I said, if you can raise your nameplate. I have with me here 3 speakers already registered. We will start with Cambodia, the Ambassador, His Excellency Sovana. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Madam President, distinguished delegates, I wish to thank all the panelists for their insights. Cambodia would like to commend you on your leadership and dedication as a president of the 23rd meeting of the State Party. Cambodia remains fully committed to upholding, reinforcing the convention norms. We continue the clearance of anti-personnel mines with a focus on areas where human life and community are at greater risk. I'm pleased to inform that the Royal Government of Cambodia has recently adopted the National Mine Action Policy 2026-2035. This is the first time we have reached this level of national ownership and strategic planning in over 3 decades of our mine action. This policy demonstrates Cambodia's determination to combat landmines and other explosive remnants of war, and our unwavering commitment to the norms of the Convention. Through this policy, Cambodia aims to release all known landmine contaminated areas by 2030, in full alignment with our third extension request under the Convention. Madam President, distinguished delegates, promoting universalization was a key priority during Cambodia's presidency of the 5th Review Conference, and we remain steadfast in advancing the universalization and implementation of the Convention. In 2025, Cambodia participated in the high-level dialogue on enhancing regional cooperation and resource mobilization capacity in mine and ERW in ASEAN Jakarta, Indonesia. Where Cambodia promoted the spirit of universalization of the Convention, particularly among ASEAN countries that have yet to join the Convention. Cambodia also hosted delegations from India, the Republic of Korea, China, and the United States to discuss cooperation in mine clearance, explosive ordnance risk education, and promoting the humanitarian norms of the Convention. In this spirit, we once again warmly congratulate the Marshall Islands, Tonga, Lebanon, on their accession. The adherence strengthened the global norms against anti-personnel mines and reinforced our shared humanitarian objective. Cambodia engaged actively as one of the champion states in the United Nations Secretary General 2025 campaign on mine action and humanitarian disarmament, reflecting its strong commitment to strengthening humanitarian disarmament norms and reinforcing the anti-personnel mine ban convention. In the same spirit, Cambodia has recently accepted the invitation of the international campaign to ban landmines to join the Nobel Peace campaign as one of the champion states to uphold and revitalize political support for the convention and to advance a shared vision of a mine-free world grounded in humanitarian principle and international cooperation. At the same time, Cambodia believes that the convention and its mechanism should always be applied in a manner consistent with their humanitarian purpose and the cooperative spirit upon which the convention is founded. As we discuss the convention role within the broader framework of the international humanitarian law, it is important that our action remain guided by objectivity, dialogue, and humanitarian consideration, with the ultimate aim of protecting civilians, preserving human dignity, and reducing suffering. In this way, the Convention can continue to strengthen both its humanitarian impacts and its contribution to international humanitarian laws. Madam President, distinguished delegates, Cambodia reaffirms its determination to work alongside all state parties and partners to ensure that the Convention remains a cornerstone of the international humanitarian law and a powerful tool to prevent the suffering caused by landmines and explosive remnants of war. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dear delegates, let me remind you that you've only got up to 3 minutes to speak in order to allow more speakers to intervene. I'll now call upon Minister Gustavo Lori from Peru. I do understand that you are no stranger to the convention. Please, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Voy a hablar en español, pero despacio para que se pueda traducir claramente. Agradezco la preparación de este panel y a todos los panelistas por sus palabras tan inspiradoras, que me han motivado a decir algunas palabras. Reservo mi mensaje como país más adelante en el tema de universalización. La historia nos demuestra, señora presidenta, que la humanidad tiene una vocación ascendente en el largo plazo hacia una sociedad más justa e igualitaria para todos. Esto a pesar de las horribles guerras que hemos presenciado últimamente y ni qué decir de las guerras de los siglos pasados. El derecho internacional humanitario ha hecho una gran contribución en este proceso ascendiente hacia una humanidad más justa e igualitaria. Y la Convención sobre las Minas Antipersonal ha hecho también una gran contribución en varias maneras y ya las han mencionado algunos de los panelistas. Primero, en la forma singular en que fue negociada esta convención. Nunca se había negociado una convención o un tratado del derecho internacional humanitario de esta manera, y siempre de manera conjunta con el Comité Internacional de la Cruz Roja y con la sociedad civil representada por el ICBL. Segundo, a través de la arquitectura que fue creada por los Estados partes de esta convención, creando este programa interseccional. Esto no estaba previsto en la convención. Los Estados partes, inspirados en la convención y sus objetivos, creó este programa interseccional, creó la unidad de implementación, unidad de apoyo a la implementación y al sponsorship program también. Y como además esta convención ha servido de inspiración para otras convenciones y tratados del derecho internacional humanitario que vinieron después. Este es el gran aporte de la convención. Y por eso los desafíos que ahora estamos viviendo para esta convención no son solamente desafíos para nuestra convención, son desafíos para el derecho internacional humanitario. No solamente buscamos el respeto del derecho internacional humanitario, sino que esta convención nos anima a seguir utilizando nuestra imaginación, nuestro deseo por una humanidad mejor y más justa. Tenemos que seguir peleando también para el desarrollo del derecho internacional humanitario, que ahora se ve amenazado, se ve relativamente estancado y tal vez estemos viviendo un proceso de retroceso de la humanidad en su conjunto. Pero veamos las cosas con positivismo, avancemos. Hay más normas que nos esperan en el tema de WIPA, por ejemplo, o en el tema de las armas letales autónomas. Hay mucho todavía por hacer, no solamente con esta convención, sino en provecho del derecho internacional humanitario y en pos de una humanidad, como dije antes, más justa y feliz para todos. Gracias.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next speaker on my list is Belarus.
Большое спасибо, уважаемая госпожа председатель. Прежде всего, позвольте выразить со стороны белорусской делегации полную поддержку вам, ваше превосходительство, госпожа Ламбия, на вашем ответственном посту. Благодарим также уважаемых участников панельной дискуссии за их содержательные презентации. Республика Беларусь – добросовестный участник Оттавской конвенции. Присоединившись к ней в 2003 году, моя страна к 2017 году завершила уничтожение 3,4 миллиона противопехотных мин, включая весьма опасные мины типа ПФМ-1. Как государство, исполнившее свои обязательства, Беларусь с глубокой обеспокоенностью наблюдает происходящий регресс, в том числе выход 5 государств – Польши, Литвы, Латвии, Эстонии и Финляндии, и попытка Украины приостановить участие, не имеющее основания ни в праве международных договоров, при фактическом неисполнении Конвенции. Это не просто отступление от уникального гуманитарного режима, установившего золотой стандарт запрета противопехотных мин. Это еще один тревожный сигнал распада системы региональной безопасности в Европе. Мины становятся еще одной линией разлома, рассекающей наш континент. Особую тревогу вызывает установка противопехотных мин нашими западными соседями вдоль наших границ. Мы слышим заявления Польши о перезапуске производства и наращивании выпуска мин со 100 тысяч до 1,2 миллиона ежегодно. В марте 2026 года Агентство вооружений Польши начало консультации по закупке 4 типов противопехотных мин с поставкой в 2026-2028 годах в общей сложности порядка 15 миллионов единиц. Для так называемого «Восточного щита» в том числе вдоль границы с Белоруссией. Литва направляет около 500 миллионов евро на закупку противотанковых и противопехотных мин, планируя десятки тысяч единиц, и собственное производство в кооперации с Финляндией, которое возвращает противопехотные мины в систему своей обороны с января 2026 года. Это серьезный сигнал подготовки наших соседей к войне. Милитаризация сопредельных государств вынуждает Беларусь реагировать. Потеряв около 3 миллионов человек в годы Второй мировой войны, наша страна не вправе допустить новые угрозы своей территории и своему народу. Мы вынуждены укреплять свою обороноспособность, что западные соседи трактуют как угрозу. К сожалению, но это не угроза, а вынужденная реакция. К сожалению, маховик гонки вооружений и обоюдной милитаризации набирает обороты. Беларусь жизненно заинтересована в деэскалации ситуации в регионе. Но сегодня на наших границах появились мины, а на юге идет война. Минирование границы – это еще один опасный фактор блокирования транспортных, экономических связей. Это угроза людям, природе и экологии. Госпожа председатель, уважаемые коллеги, Оттавская конвенция не должна стать эпитафией миру в Европе. Напротив, она способна стать примером того, как совместными усилиями ради будущего свободного от противопехотных мин можно начать преодолевать геополитическую пропасть, образовавшуюся на нашем континенте. Беларусь подтверждает свою приверженность целям и духу Конвенции. Уничтожение наших миллионных запасов в свое время стало возможным благодаря совместным усилиям государств, в том числе государств-членов ЕС и НАТО. И сейчас Беларусь призывает все государства вернуться к неукоснительному соблюдению Конвенции и возвращению к конструктивному диалогу для достижения ее высокой цели. Благодарю вас.
Thank you, Belarus. We have France.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je voudrais tout d'abord, au nom de mon pays, vous féliciter de votre accession à la présidence de cette Assemblée et également de la manière dont vous présidez ces travaux. Je voudrais également féliciter la Croatie d'avoir atteint ses objectifs, mais je voudrais adresser surtout un salut très chaleureux au Liban qui a rejoint notre convention. Le Liban était un pilier de cette convention sans en être membre. Nous savons tous la qualité du fonctionnement du LMAC, les résultats remarquables qu'il a obtenus, la qualité et l'efficacité des opérations de déminage, et nous avons soutenu notre pays, l'école régionale de déminage humanitaire du Liban depuis de nombreuses années, et nous avons de nombreux projets avec le LMAC, dont notamment un avec nos amis allemands dont nous sommes très fiers, et nous continuerons à appuyer le Liban. Le fait que le Liban rejoigne la Convention est une très bonne nouvelle, d'autant plus que c'est un pays en guerre et qui montre à d'autres pays en guerre que l'on peut rejoindre la Convention. Et nous espérons que le Liban sera récompensé de ce choix et que beaucoup de donateurs, alors que le Liban est précisément un pays qui est proche de l'achèvement, verront là l'occasion d'augmenter leur soutien au Liban afin de lui permettre d'atteindre les objectifs de la Convention. Et nous espérons que ce bénéfice que le Liban tirera de cette adhésion sera aussi une motivation pour d'autres pays, par exemple dans le Caucase, qui s'interrogent encore sur l'idée de rejoindre cette convention et qui, voyant la dynamique positive qui peut suivre une adhésion, rejoindront également la convention. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, France. We now have Germany. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to be clear, I would like to deliver a national statement. Are we still with the panel discussion? Then I would wait for a moment.
You're not intervening now, no?
I'm just asking, you're still with the panel discussion? Because
Yes, we're still with the
okay,
panelists.
so I will wait for a moment. I have a national statement to deliver. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So we have Indonesia then. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Indonesia aligns itself with humanitarian objective and fundamental principle of Anti-Absolute Main Ban Convention, and thank the distinguished panelists for their insightful presentation and valuable contribution to our discussion. We also warmly congratulate Lebanon on joining the APMDC and commend Croatia on achieving mine-free status. This important milestone demonstrates that despite ongoing challenges, progress toward the Convention humanitarian objective remain possible through sustained political commitment and international cooperation. Indonesia remains concerned by the continued use of anti-personnel mine and development that risk undermine the Convention. These challenges should strengthen, not weaken, our collective commitment to the Convention and international humanitarian law. In this regard, we welcome the CMREP Angkor Plan Action 2025 to 2029 as important roadmap for universalization, effective implementation, international cooperation, and national ownership. Indonesia believes that universalization is best advanced through dialogue, confidence building, technical cooperation, and sharing of good practices. At the same time, all actors must respect the Convention humanitarian norms. The use, production, stockpiling, or transfer of anti-personnel mine by any actor, including armed non-state actors, must cease. Indonesia also believes that compliance is best promoted through dialogue, transparency, and cooperation. The Convention cooperative compliance mechanism provides the appropriate framework for addressing concern while maintaining confidence among state parties. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Indonesia. We have Switzerland. You have the floor.
Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, depuis son adoption, la Convention sur les mines antipersonnelles s'est révélée être un instrument clé du droit international humanitaire pour la protection des populations civiles ainsi que pour la promotion de la paix et du développement durable. Elle concrétise les limitations imposées par le droit international humanitaire quand on choisit des méthodes et moyens qui peuvent être utilisés dans des conflits armés. De plus, elle constitue un élément crucial de l'architecture de désarmement humanitaire que la Suisse est fière d'accueillir à Genève. L'an dernier, 5 États ont pris la décision de se retirer de la Convention en invoquant son article 20. La Suisse reconnaît que la situation sécuritaire en Europe s'est détériorée. Elle continue toutefois de rappeler que les mines antipersonnelles frappent sans distinction et produisent des effets disproportionnés bien au-delà de la fin des hostilités. La Suisse a fait part de ses regrets concernant ces décisions et a invité les États concernés à plusieurs reprises et par différents biais à reconsidérer leurs décisions dans les plus brefs délais. Elle rappelle en outre que les États non partis à la Convention continuent à être soumis à l'obligation de respecter pleinement le droit international humanitaire ainsi que le protocole 2 modifié de la Convention sur certaines armes conventionnelles. La Suisse et d'autres États ont également soumis une objection à la communication de l'Ukraine visant à suspendre l'application de la Convention. En décembre, la réunion des États partis a affirmé que la Convention n'autorise pas la suspension de son application et par conséquent de ses obligations. Nous sommes conscients du contexte difficile dans lequel la communication circulée par l'Ukraine est intervenue. La Suisse condamne avec la plus grande fermeté la guerre que la Russie continue à mener contre l'Ukraine, ainsi que tout l'emploi des mines antipersonnelles. La Suisse continue d'œuvrer en faveur de l'universalisation de notre Convention. Nous restons convaincus que seule interdiction complète et emploi des mines antipersonnelles peut protéger la population civile de leurs effets dévastateurs, même des décennies après la fin des conflits. Nous félicitons le Liban d'avoir pris la décision de ratifier la Convention, un pas important alors que le pays se trouve affecté par un conflit armé. La ratification de la Convention par le Liban a également une valeur hautement symbolique dans une période difficile pour l'universalisation de notre Convention. Nous espérons que cet engagement contribuera à inverser la tendance préoccupante observée au cours des dernières années. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Switzerland, and thank you for the support that you've always given to the implementation of the convention, including the implementation support unit, as well as to our intersessional meetings. I now give the floor to GICHD.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. The Convention's impact on the lives of millions of people around the world is unquestionable, and its norms enjoy broad adherence. But today, these achievements are under pressure, and we owe it to the people this Convention was built to protect, to reflect on why this is the case and on the implications this might have. A common narrative to explain the latest developments is that anti-personnel mines could be banned because they were not seen as militarily useful. This is simply not true. In the late 90s, AP mines were widely stockpiled and used. The argument for their ban was not that they lacked military value, but that no military value could justify their impacts on people. The Convention rested on the primacy of humanitarian protection over military advantage. Suggesting otherwise is rewriting history. Madam President, the security concerns that have informed recent withdrawals deserve to be taken seriously. However, the argument of exceptional circumstances should also be considered carefully. The APMBC was adopted at a time of brutal armed conflicts, where anti-personnel mines were killing and maiming thousands of people every year, to the point of being described as a weapon of mass destruction in slow motion. The drafters of this convention knew exactly what armed conflict looked like, and they explicitly provided that withdrawal cannot take effect when a state is engaged in one. That reflected a deliberate political choice to ensure that rules designed to protect civilians are not set aside precisely when violence escalates. There's one more dimension to this argument that cannot be ignored. Once an exception is accepted, on what basis can the next one be refused? We may know where an exception begins. We cannot always know where its logic ends. These concerns extend beyond this convention towards the broader framework of international humanitarian law. IHL rests on the principle that the protection of civilians constrains the way we use armed force, even in situations of self-defense. When that logic is reversed, we're not simply facing pressure on a single treaty, but the potential inversion of the overall system. This matters even more today as IHL violations become increasingly persistent and widespread and are sometimes met with tacit acceptance. The ICRC's Global IHL Initiative and the UN Secretary General's Mine Action Campaign are important responses to this crisis, but they also confirm that what we are witnessing is not an isolated issue, but a serious challenge to a whole system of agreed rules. The AP Mine Ban Convention remains one of the clearest examples of what becomes possible when states place humanitarian protection at the center of their action. Preserving that achievement and the broader system of which it is a part will require commitment, sustained engagement, and a willingness to defend these norms precisely when they're most tested. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now give the floor to ICBL. And that will be our last speaker on the list, unless somebody else wants to speak. Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm Habouba Aoun from Lebanon. I'm the director of the Landmine Resource Center at the Faculty of Health Sciences of the University of Balaman and member of ICBL. I have worked for almost 30 years to see Lebanon's accession to the Mine Ban Treaty. I wish to congratulate my Lebanon for this huge achievement. I mean the accession to the Mine Ban Treaty at a special moment of history where wars didn't stop, but they continue to prove that mines are useless. At a special time of history where countries are withdrawing from the Mine Ban Treaty to risk more lives and to bring more unneeded, unnecessary casualties and destructions. I wish to congratulate the Lebanon Mine Action Center of the Lebanese Army for being the #1 in mine action and for saving not a single effort to abide by international treaties, including the international humanitarian law. Congratulations to the Lebanese diplomacy and the delegation for the UN for accomplishing the accession. I wish to recognize and congratulate civil society, the ICBL and all its members around the world for the long years of campaigning in order to make the Mine Ban Treaty a reality, together with world governments caring for peace and for life with dignity. Thank you, RCBL, for we are together since before you received the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1997. Your or our work deserves more, and I'm really proud to be a campaigner with you. Thank you, donors. Please continue helping Lebanon Mine Action and all mine action programs all over the world. In Lebanon, we are still experiencing bad war times. Please help Lebanon recover. Please help Lebanon get rid of the problems, including the mine problem. We want to live peacefully and with dignity. Lastly, I call on all states outside our convention, take the example of Lebanon, join our treaty, and say no to landmines, no to use, no to production, transfer of landmines, once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, ICBL. The last speaker on the list is Zambia.
Thank you, Madam President. Zambia reaffirms its commitment to the objectives and principles of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention and is happy to take part in these intersessional meetings at a critical moment for the Convention's implementation. In the face of increasing geopolitical tensions, Zambia commends the progress made so far in universalizing the Convention and in mine clearance. In this regard, we join all states parties in congratulating Lebanon for taking the bold decision to join the Convention. Indeed, as stated by the distinguished delegate from Lebanon, its decision demonstrates that progress is possible even against all odds. In the same vein, Zambia congratulates Croatia for achieving the status of a mine-free country. This development strongly reflects the country's commitment to the norms of the Convention. Madam President, it may be recalled for context that Zambia completed its mine clearance obligations in November 2009, 2 years ahead of schedule. We, however, acknowledge the challenges faced by other states parties that are yet to complete their mine clearance obligations under Article 5 of the Convention. On this score, we look forward to getting an update on the proposed establishment of a voluntary trust fund under the Convention. Madam President, we also wish to stress the importance of victim assistance in the implementation of the Convention. In this regard, we commend Misad Tokic of Croatia, a mine survivor, for coming to put a face to the ills of landmines, so that our discussions on victim assistance are not in abstract only. Survivors of landmines must remain at the center of our efforts, with their rights and dignity fully upheld. Further, we underscore the importance of enhanced international cooperation in form of partnerships between affected and donor states, as well as collaboration with international civil society organizations. Madam President, finally, as we look ahead to the 23rd MSP, we encourage all states parties to renew their commitments to the Convention, including the implementation of the Siem Reap Anchor Action Plan, and to work collectively towards a mine-free world. I thank you.
Thank you, Zambia. Thank you to all those that have intervened in this panel discussion. And now I want to turn to my panelists for any final reflections or remarks. We'll start with Ambassador Caroline of Lebanon. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, just 1 second. Which country is that? Mauritania. Mauritania, okay. Sorry about that, I didn't see you. You now have the floor. I hope you're the last speaker.
Bonjour. Je vais essayer d'être le plus succinct possible. Mes félicitations tout d'abord, Madame la Présidente, pour votre accession à la présidence. Mes félicitations encore, Excellence, pour la décision courageuse du Liban. Et toutes mes félicitations à la Croatie pour le résultat merveilleux déjà obtenu. Mon pays, la Mauritanie, réitère ses engagements internationaux, particulièrement dans le cadre de la Convention d'Ottawa. Mais je pense qu'il serait judicieux de revoir les obstacles majeurs auxquels fait face notre noble Convention. Et de mon point de vue, je pense que cette Convention se heurte à de multiples obstacles d'ordre géopolitique, d'ordre asymétrique sur le plan économique et d'ordre de dépendance des pays affectés par ce fléau à des donateurs, à des bailleurs de fonds. Donc je pense qu'il serait judicieux, encore une fois, de regarder ce tableau de bord et d'essayer de trouver le traitement approprié, car le diagnostic, de mon point de vue, est fait. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Mauritania. I hope that is the last speaker. As I said earlier, I want to thank all those that have intervened, and I want to turn to the panelists for their last words, reflections on anything else that they would want to conclude. I'll start with Ambassador Caroline of Lebanon. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I exceeded the time allocated to me. 1 minute just to thank you all and to share with you that Lebanon's decision to join the convention comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility and urgency. We are committed to continue working with all of you. The work ahead of us is still enormous. We have the team of ALMAC and the Regional Institute. We can count on your support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. Melanie, from the UN.
Thank you, Madam President. Also, just to reaffirm the United Nations commitment to work with each and every one of you, states and civil society and international organizations, as we move forward to the 30th anniversary of this convention, and reiterate and celebrate human security at the forefront of all humanitarian disarmament instruments, with a view of protecting our civilians, and together to celebrate and reaffirm our commitment to these important conventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. I now give the floor to Karen, IPU.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you very much again for this debate. We take away, again, the importance of continued and strengthened advocacy and engagement with a variety of stakeholders, and as Ambassador from Austria said, going back to basics, bringing back evidence and humans at the center of this debate. So you can count on the IPU to continue the advocacy with a new leadership of parliamentarians. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Laurent, ICRC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been extremely glad to hear in your statements a very strong adhesion to the Convention and the norms it embodies at every level, from condemnation of any use of anti-personnel mines towards the complete universalization of the Convention and the importance of efforts to complete clearance obligations, including how international cooperation and support can help achieve these objectives. Permettez-moi de faire écho à ce que vient de dire Mélanie. Le Comité international de la Croix-Rouge est également prêt et déterminé à continuer à travailler avec vous tous à l'universalisation de cette convention et à sa complète mise en œuvre. Je terminerai en réitérant les félicitations du CICR au Liban et à la Croatie. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. We have Ambassador Alexander.
Thanks a lot. Maybe just one comment that given that IHL is facing a systemic challenge, that it's important to look at all the initiatives that are now taking place to try to push back against the challenge for the protection of civilians. Of course, the ICSC Global Initiative, the Safe Schools Declaration, EVIPA, and of course this convention, to look at them together to really refocus putting the protection of civilians at the center of our efforts, and to push back against the arguments that the protection is contingent to military necessities and considerations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And finally, I give the floor to Tama.
Thank you, Madam President. I really wanted to thank you for organizing this particular panel and for the framing of the panel, which is not just to look back on a difficult year, but to look at the broader impact of that on all of the laws that govern wartime behavior. We just want to note again how highly damaging it is, as others have said, to the whole body of those laws when states turn their back on those principles just at the moment when the rules might need to be applied. It's a highly dangerous notion for states to claim they can do anything and everything to protect their people. And as Sylvia from GICHD said, where does that logic end? So it's important to discuss these issues openly, frankly, among friends, among longtime supporters of this convention, and then hopefully to move on, to put this troubled period behind us and to look forward to a more positive era. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tama. Excellencies, colleagues, thank you for this rich and energizing discussion. What we heard today reinforces a simple truth. The Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention remains a cornerstone of IHL, but its strength depends on our collective action, our unity, and our willingness to speak frankly when its norms are challenged. Your insights today will help guide our work as we implement the SIMRIP action plan and continue strengthening the Convention's place within the global IHL architecture. Please join me in thanking our panelists, and thank you to all delegations for your engagement. A round of applause to all the panelists. As the panelists depart, as our panelists depart, to stay on time, allow me to continue with universalization. Colleagues, 29 years on after its adoption, the Convention has 161 states parties implementing its provisions, placing it amongst the most universal humanitarian disarmament instrument. Yet we lost 5 states parties, and there are still 35 states that have not joined us. Pursuing universal adherence to the Convention and acceptance of its norms is essential to fulfilling the promise of the Convention. I am pleased to see that a number of states not party have joined us today, and we look forward to hearing from you. You are all here as observers, and we welcome wholeheartedly your participation. We would like to hear from you. As President, I will certainly do my best to use every opportunity that I have to promote the Convention and engage states that are not party, including by encouraging states not party to join us at the 23rd meeting of states parties at the end of the year. My hope is that some of you can join Lebanon at the 23rd meeting of states parties at the end of the year as states parties. I want to take this opportunity to thank states parties and organizations that participate in the Universalization Coordination Group that have supported plans to coordinate universalization efforts. In the last months, I've also had the pleasure of meeting with the representatives of Lebanon, Micronesia here in Geneva, and Morocco, whose foreign minister was engaged by my foreign minister. I will continue having bilateral meetings with states not party throughout the rest of my presidency to ensure that we are able to welcome more states to our family of states parties in the very near future. As I mentioned earlier, between now and the 23rd meeting of states parties in November, I will continue my engagement with all states not party, particularly those countries that are making significant efforts to join the convention. With this said, I would now like to open the floor to states not party, which would like to provide updates on the steps that they are taking to move closer to the convention. On my list, I have the Republic of Korea as the first speaker.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to begin by congratulating you on assuming the presidency of the 23rd meeting of the states parties. The Republic of Korea is pleased to participate in the intersessional meetings of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention as an observer. We commend the President's efforts to strengthen the implementation of international humanitarian law through reaffirming the Siem Reap Anchor Action Plan. Despite not yet being able to accede to the convention due to the unique security situation on the Korean Peninsula, we fully share the humanitarian objectives of the convention and remain concerned about the humanitarian impact of the indiscriminate use of anti-personnel mines. My delegation would like to update you on our efforts to mitigate the risks associated with anti-personnel mines in Korea. The Republic of Korea has been on a steady path of anti-personnel mine clearance where possible. In 2025, we voluntarily removed 38 anti-personnel mines and 6 anti-tank mines over an area of 43,808 square meters in adherence to the International Mine Action Standards. We are also exercising strict control over anti-personnel mines and have maintained an indefinite extension of the moratorium on their export since 1997. In a similar vein, the Republic of Korea has not installed any mines for several years. For existing mines, we are undertaking all possible precautionary measures to protect civilians from the risks and effects of mines by including fencing, warnings, and monitoring. In this regard, the Republic of Korea has enacted the Law on Mine Response Activities, including mine clearance, in 2024. Under this new law, the Ministry of National Defense will devise a basic mine action plan every 5 years and establish a mine response activity committee to deliberate on matters related to mine action activities. Furthermore, in accordance with the Special Act on the Support for Mine Victims, the ROK government has provided over $1.4 million in compensations and subsidies to persons and their surviving families affected by mine accidents between 1953 and 2012. As a party to the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons and its amended Protocol 2, the Republic of Korea has actively participated in discussions and initiatives to promote the responsible use of mines. The Republic of Korea has also been actively engaged in global humanitarian demining efforts through both bilateral and multilateral channels, including the UN Voluntary Trust Fund for Assistance in Mine Action, UN Mine Action, the International Trust Fund for Enhancing Human Security, and Korea International Cooperation Agency. Since 1993, my government has contributed around $99 million to support these activities worldwide. In 2025 alone, the Republic of Korea supported humanitarian demining efforts in Lebanon, Palestine, Ukraine, and other places, providing relevant humanitarian demining training and equipment, victim assistance, and capacity building for affected communities across various regions. The Republic of Korea wishes to close by reiterating its support and commitment to the objectives and purposes of the Ottawa Convention. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Korea, for observing the obligations of the Convention. I now call on Azerbaijan. You have the floor.
Madam President, allow me to begin by congratulating you on your assumption of the presidency of the 23rd meeting of the state parties to the Anti-Personal Mine Ban Convention and assure you of Azerbaijan's full support to your mandate. Azerbaijan supports humanitarian principles and objectives that underpin the Ottawa Convention. We remain committed to addressing the humanitarian impact of landmines and contributing to the efforts aimed at protecting civilians and reducing human suffering. Landmines remain one of the gravest legacies of the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict and continue to claim lives long after the war has ended. Since November 10, 2020, Azerbaijan has recorded 427 mine victims, including 231 civilians. Since 1991, the total number of mine victims has exceeded 3,500 people, among them 362 children and youth and 38 women. Beyond the tragic human toll, widespread mine contamination remains a major obstacle to the safe return of internally displaced persons, reconstruction of liberated territories, economic development, and revitalization of agriculture. Azerbaijan remains among the most heavily mine-contaminated countries in the world. Since the end of war in 2020, important progress has been achieved in demining operations, with a total of 260,337 hectares of land successfully cleared of 64,642 mines and 181,487 explosive remnants of war. The total cleared area constitutes approximately 22.3% of the total estimated contaminated area. The government of the Republic of Azerbaijan has allocated approximately 95.8% of the resources dedicated to demining operations, while foreign assistance in total accounted for only 4.1%. Nevertheless, these efforts remain significantly underfunded in relation to the scale of contamination and growing needs on the ground. We therefore call upon the international community to strengthen its support for and cooperation with the Republic of Azerbaijan in addressing the challenge of landmine contamination. Madam President, every mine discovered and cleared represents not only a life potentially saved, but also a step towards recovery and safe environment. Mine action is not merely a security issue, it's a humanitarian imperative and a prerequisite for sustainable development and reconstruction. I thank you.
I now give the floor to Myanmar.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation is honored to participate in this intersessional meeting.
as an observer state. At the outset, we wish to congratulate you on her assumption of presidency in this intersessional meeting and the upcoming 23rd meetings of State Party to Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention. Although Myanmar is not a state party to this convention, since 2003, we have been participating in the meetings of state parties to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention as an observer, and studying the convention and its works. At the national level, we undertake measures related to the humanitarian mine action pillars, with particular focus on the areas of mine risk education and reduction, advocacy, and victim assistance. For this, the government of Myanmar has constituted the central body of Mine Risk Education Inter-Ministerial Working Group, led by Deputy Minister level. The central body oversees victim assistance, development of national mine action standards, formulation of the procedure of mines and other explosive ordnance risk reduction, and guidance of the national mine action. Further, since 2017, a program has been set up to provide cash assistance to mine-affected victims. And as of March 2026, a total of 1,017 victims has received cash assistance under this program. Madam President, efforts are being undertaken by relevant governmental agencies to strengthen the cooperation with regional intergovernmental organizations as well as international organizations. Department of Rehabilitation collaborate with ASEAN Regional Mine Action Center and participate in regional mine action, consultative meetings, workshops, and capacity building training. Under the project of Enhanced Victim Assistance in ASEAN member states, Myanmar hosted a national consultative meeting on the establishment of Regional Victim Assistance Network in 2022, as well as National Consultation Workshop on Physical Rehabilitation and Mental Health Needs Support of Explosive Ordnance Victims in 2024, respectively. Moreover, Myanmar participates in ASEAN Defense ADMM Plus Expert Working Group on Humanitarian Mine Action, and under this platform, effective and practical cooperation is being carried out to deal with the mines and explosive remnants of war. In collaboration with ICRC, the Department of Rehabilitation organized a variety of sessions on risk awareness and safe behavior, as well as training of trainers on risk awareness and safe behavior to enhance the capacity of the personnel working in the sector of mine risk education. Additionally, in partnership with UNICEF, Child Protection Work Plan 2026 and 27 is being developed to implement the activities of awareness raising on the need to protect children from violence and exploitation during emergencies, including explosive ordnance risk education. With a view to improving sustainable national capacities, our relevant government agency participate in the capacity building trainings related to humanitarian mine action organized by GICHD. Likewise, the Department of Rehabilitation has been reviewing the proposed MOU with a number of INGO to strengthen efforts in explosive ordnance risk education and provision of humanitarian assistance. With respect to clearance of anti-personnel landmine, military engineering forces always undertake the mine clearance and demining activities in the recaptured areas, which previously fall under the temporary control of armed insurgent groups, to ensure the safety of the returnees and civilians in those areas. From 2011 to 2024, military engineering forces have already cleared and destroyed a total of 40,629 explosive mines. Madam President, the fundamental requirement for a successful nationwide demining process is building peace. Therefore, the government keeps the peace process at its high priority, and thus, since the first days of its formation, the ethnic armed organizations are being invited for the peace talks. We believe that in the near future, we will continue to accelerate our efforts on national demining along with the progress in peace process. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Myanmar. I have Lao PDR. You have the floor.
Madam President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to represent the Lao PDR to participate in the intersessional meetings of the Anti-Personal Mind Ban Convention as an observer. At the outset, I express my delegation's sincere congratulations and appreciation to you, Ambassador Lambuya, Permanent Representative of Zambia, on your assumption as President of the 23rd meeting of the state parties, and for your able leadership and dedicated efforts in advancing the Convention norms and objectives. We commend state parties and relevant stakeholders for the progress and efforts made in promoting the universalization and implementation of the Convention to elaborate the suffering caused by these weapons and to support my affected communities. The Lao PDR recognizes the profound humanitarian consequences caused by anti-personal mines, cluster munition, and other explosive remnants of war. These indiscriminate weapons continue to pose persistent and devastating threats to civilian populations, claim innocent lives, inflict long-term suffering, and severely undermine the socio-economic development of affected community for generations. As one of the countries most heavily contaminated by explosive ordnance, the Lao PDR continues to face significant challenges to lives, livelihoods, food security, and development, particularly in rural and remote areas. The Lao government remains firmly committed to addressing these legacies through survey and clearance, risk education, and victim assistance. We undertake these efforts in close collaboration with national authorities, development partners, UN agencies, and civil society. Madam President, our sustained engagement as an observer reflects our continued support for the Convention's humanitarian objectives. Most notably, the active participation of our Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs at the 5th Review Conference in Siem Reap, Cambodia, demonstrated the high-level political importance that the Lao PDR attaches to humanitarian disarmament. In this regard, the Lao PDR intends to submit a national voluntary report at the 23rd meeting of the State Party in December this year. This voluntary initiative reflects our commitment to transparency, information sharing, and constructive engagement with state parties. We view this as a significant step towards strengthening our cooperation with the Convention. Furthermore, as President of the Third Review Conference of the Convention on Cluster Munitions, the Lao PDR remains deeply committed to promoting dialogue, international cooperation, and humanitarian principles that underpin global disarmament efforts. Continued partnerships and sustained international assistance remain essential to ensuring the safety and sustainable development of affected community. Madam President, in conclusion, I wish to reaffirm the Lao PDR's steadfast commitment to the humanitarian objectives of the APMBC. We stand ready to work alongside with the international community to build a world where all people can live free from the threats of explosive remnants of war. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Lao PDR. I don't have any more on the list of non-state parties who would like to take the floor, but if there's any other that would like to take the floor, please raise your nameplate. No. Okay, I see none from the non-state parties. Thank you to all the non-state parties that have taken the floor. It is my fervent hope that you will join the family of the APM mine ban soon, given the commitment that you have shown to humanitarian principles and the protection of civilians. I would now like to invite state parties to intervene, starting with the Minister of Peru. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias nuevamente, señora presidenta, distinguidos delegados. El Perú reitera su compromiso firme e inquebrantable con el desarme humanitario y con un orden internacional basado en el respeto al derecho internacional, en particular el derecho internacional humanitario. Con ese espíritu, el Perú copreside junto al Reino Unido, Alemania y Filipinas la línea de trabajo sobre comisiones nacionales en el marco de la Iniciativa Mundial para reactivar el compromiso político con el derecho internacional humanitario. En un contexto en el que los conflictos armados se intensifican y las poblaciones civiles enfrentan riesgos crecientes, resulta imperativo defender y fortalecer los marcos jurídicos que protegen la vida y la dignidad humanas. Celebramos con especial satisfacción la adhesión de la Convención por parte de las Islas Marshall y el Reino de Tonga. Estos avances constituyen señales alentadoras, no solo de posibles futuras adhesiones de otros estados, sino también de que los principios humanitarios que inspiran este tratado siguen siendo relevantes y compartidos. Saludamos de manera especial la reciente ratificación por parte de la República Libanesa, lo que no solo constituye un logro significativo para los objetivos de la universalización de la Convención, sino que en un momento en el que algunos estados han puesto en duda sus compromisos en virtud del desarme humanitario, envía un mensaje claro y oportuno sobre la alta prioridad que representa la protección de la población civil y el fortalecimiento del rechazo internacional de las minas antipersonal. Reafirmamos que los tratados del desarme humanitario deben aplicarse tanto en tiempos de paz como de conflicto. Argumentar su inaplicabilidad bajo supuestos de seguridad nacional o utilidad militar no solo debilita esta convención, sino que erosiona los cimientos mismos del derecho internacional humanitario. En ese sentido, lamentamos profundamente que 5 estados hayan decidido retirarse del tratado, ejerciendo sus prerrogativas en virtud del artículo 20 de esta convención. El retiro de un estado parte constituye un retroceso que afecta no solo a esta comunidad, sino también a los esfuerzos globales por reducir el sufrimiento humano. Como lo ha señalado el secretario general de las Naciones Unidas, debemos defender las normas humanitarias y acelerar la acción contra las minas. La protección de vidas inocentes depende de nuestra acción y compromiso colectivos. Señora Presidenta, el Perú reafirma su convicción que avanzar hacia la universalización del tratado no solo consolida el marco jurídico humanitario, sino que también proyecta un mensaje claro de solidaridad y responsabilidad compartida frente a una amenaza que afecta a la seguridad y el desarrollo sostenible de los pueblos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next one is Sierra Leone on behalf of the African Group. Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the African Group. Allow me to begin by congratulating Your Excellency Ambassador Luamba of Zambia on your able leadership and dedication in steering the work of the Convention. The Africa Group is proud that the work of the state parties is being guided by an African president, and we pledge our support to your presidency. The Africa Group remains firmly committed to the goals of the Convention. We reiterate our long-standing position that anti-personal mines are inherently indiscriminate weapons with devastating humanitarian, socio-economic, and developmental consequences, constituting violations of human rights and the principles of international humanitarian law. These weapons continue to kill, maim, and traumatize innocent civilians, including women and children, long after conflicts have ended. And their elimination remains both a moral and legal imperative. Madam President, we take this opportunity to proudly reaffirm that Africa remains the most universalized region under the Convention. With the overwhelming majority of African Union member states as state parties, a strong and living testament to our continent's political will and humanitarian commitment to achieving a mine-free world. We encourage remaining African states that have yet to join the convention to do so and call on regional peers to support these efforts. The African Group warmly welcomes Lebanon's accession as the most recent and significant positive development in universalization. Lebanon's decision is a timely and compelling affirmation of the enduring relevance and moral authority of this convention, and a clear signal that its norms must be upheld and reinforced, not weakened. We hope this decision will inspire other states that have yet to join. We also commend Croatia on achieving a mine-free status. Madam President, the Africa Group has noted with profound concern the continued and unprecedented trend of withdrawals and intentions to withdraw from the Convention. While we understand that the global security environment has grown increasingly volatile, we believe that the strength of this Convention lies in its collective ability to address emerging security challenges within the framework of cooperation and solidarity. Withdrawal risks eroding hard-won gains and undermines the confidence of international community in the effectiveness and endurance of this vital instrument. We recall that the 22nd meeting of state parties reaffirmed that the Convention does not permit the suspension of its operation or its obligations. The Africa Group fully upholds its position and calls on states to reconsider and to engage within the Convention's framework. The Africa Group has consistently condemned violations of Convention norms, including the use of anti-personnel mines by any actor. We reaffirm that such violations are unacceptable and incompatible with the principles of international humanitarian law. We call on all state parties to take all appropriate legal, administrative, and other measures to prevent and suppress any prohibited activity under the Convention. Madam President, the Africa Group underscores the critical importance of sustained, predictable, and coordinated international cooperation and assistance as an essential enabler of both universalization and implementation. 16 African states continue to carry outstanding Article 5 obligations, several making notable progress despite receiving amongst the lowest levels of international assistance of any affected region. This must be addressed as a matter of urgency. In this regard, the African Group is encouraged by the launch at this intersessional meeting of the project, working towards a mine-free Africa, building African capacity to remove threats posed by anti-personnel landmines to peace, security, and development, and calls on international community to build on such initiatives with broad, sustained, coordinated support for mine-affected African states in line with the CRP Action Plan 2025-2029. Finally, Madam President, the African Group calls on states, civil society, and international community to intensify outreach to states not yet party with a view to demonstrating their interest, that their interests can be advanced within the Convention's framework. The Convention remains one of the most successful humanitarian disarmament instruments of our time. We must collectively preserve its integrity, its universality, and the humanitarian norms it embodies. The African Group stand ready to engage constructively throughout these intersessional meetings in advancing the goal of this convention. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Sierra Leone. May I please remind the delegates to stick to 2 minutes because we have quite a long list of speakers here. I'll now call on South Africa. Please stick to 2 minutes if you can. We'll appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam President. From the outset, we wish to congratulate Your Excellency, Ambassador Tembo Luamba of Zambia and your team for your able leadership, as well as the ISU for their dedication in steering the work of the convention towards the 23rd MSP. South Africa reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the full implementation of the Ottawa Convention, including the objectives and actions outlined in the SIMRIM Anchor Action Plan, as we warmly welcome Lebanon's accession on 1st of May 2026 as the most recent and significant positive development in universalization and testament that the Convention applies in both times of peace and times of war. We remain dedicated to promoting the universalization of the Convention and strengthening the international norm against the use of stockpiling, production, transfer, and anti-personnel mine consistent with Actions 11 and 12 of the Action Plan. South Africa is firmly committed to promoting the formal adherence of states not party to the anti-personnel mine ban of states not party to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention in our national capacity and through our engagement within the Africa Group. We have consistently encouraged all states that have not yet done so to accede to the convention, recognizing that universalization is essential to closing gaps in the global humanitarian regime. Since the 22nd meeting of state parties, South Africa has continued to advocate for the convention in multilateral fora, emphasizing its humanitarian imperative and its central role within the international humanitarian law. South Africa remains concerned by the continued use of anti-personnel mines and their devastating humanitarian consequences. These weapons continue to kill and injure civilians indiscriminately long after conflicts have ended, posing a persistent threat to communities, humanitarian personnel, and displaced population. Their production and use undermine fundamental principles of international humanitarian law, including distinction, proportionality, and precaution, and hampers post-conflict recovery and development efforts. We call on all parties to armed conflict to cease the use of anti-personnel mine bans under any circumstances, fully comply with their obligations under international humanitarian law and Ottawa Convention. In line with Action 12, South Africa has not hesitated to condemn the use and the production and use of anti-personnel mine bans by any actor, anywhere and under any circumstances. We believe that the consistent and principled condemnation is essential to preserving the integrity of the norm and preventing further humanitarian harm. We stand ready to continue working with all partners to advance the universalization of the convention, strengthen its norms, and ensure their full and effective implementation. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, South Africa. I will now call upon the European Union, followed by Ireland and Germany, before we break off for lunch. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states, the candidate countries North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, and Republic of Moldova, as well as the EFTA country Iceland, member of the European Economic Area, align themselves with this statement. The European Union is resolute in its support for and advancing of the humanitarian objectives of the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention. Nearly 3 decades after its adoption, the Convention has been critical to the protection of civilians in times of armed conflict and post-conflict, the reduction of human suffering, and the restoration of land, livelihoods, and development prospects in affected communities worldwide. The European Union welcomes recent accessions to the Convention, including those of the Marshall Islands and Tonga, and commends Lebanon's decision to join the Convention despite an extremely challenging situation. We are further encouraged that Micronesia and Syria are engaging in recent meetings of the Convention, including with the ISU. All these developments send a positive signal for the treaty. We commend efforts in support of the Convention's universalization, including those led by Zambia's presidency, previous presidencies Japan and Cambodia, the ISU, and the Convention's special envoys, His Royal Highness Prince Miret of Jordan, and Her Royal Highness Princess Astrid of Belgium. On 14th April last year, the EU allocated €2.7 million in support of the Siem Reap Anchor Action Plan for the implementation of the Convention, including its universalization objectives. We would like to take this opportunity to commend the dedicated work and continued engagement of the ISU team implementing the project under this decision. I thank you.
Thank you, EU. We have Ireland now, followed by the last speaker for the day, for the morning, Germany. Ireland, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Ireland aligns with the statement made on behalf of the European Union. Allow me to congratulate Zambia on its assumption of the presidency. Ireland expresses its appreciation to you, your team, and the ISU for advancing the essential universalisation commitments of the Siem Reap Anchor Action Plan. President, Ireland warmly welcomes Lebanon as the latest state party to the convention and commends their decision to join despite exceptionally challenging circumstances. Their accession, alongside those of the Republic of the Marshall Islands and the Kingdom of Tonga, are positive signals at a challenging time globally and for the convention itself following the concerning recent withdrawal of 5 states parties. Ireland remains a firm supporter of the convention and will continue to advocate for its full universalisation. The APMVC's achievements are unquestionable, yet universalisation remains a significant challenge. Such efforts should be underpinned by demonstrating and reaffirming the value of this vital humanitarian disarmament convention, which also bolsters IHL, international norms, and the rules-based order. Crucially, it continues to protect civilians from indiscriminate harms. At a time of increasing conflict globally, we must protect and safeguard the treaty and its aims. President, we remind that according to the latest Land Monitor report, in 2024, a total of 6,279 people were killed or injured by landmines and unexploded ordnance, the highest number recorded since 2020. Around 90% of victims were children, almost half, or were civilians, with almost half children. We're deeply disturbed by the continued rise in casualties resulting from the increased use of anti-personnel landmines, including improvised mines and from legacy contamination. This reality reinforces the urgency of renewed action to promote the universalisation of the Convention. Universalisation needs to remain at the heart of our collective efforts, and Ireland will work with partners in achieving that goal. President, anti-personnel landmines constitute a threat to human security. Civilians suffer from injuries, deaths, and differentiated impacts from the use of these indiscriminate weapons. Ireland unequivocally condemns the use of anti-personnel landmines under any circumstances and by any actor. We must redouble our efforts and reaffirm our commitments towards upholding and promoting the norm against landmines, while continue constructive outreach efforts to non-states parties to achieve universalisation. In that regard, Ireland acknowledges the positive engagement of the Federated States of Micronesia and the Syrian Arab Republic with the APMVC ISU. President, Ireland warmly congratulates Croatia, who has officially declared themselves free of landmines. Their hard work and success should stand as a testament to the effectiveness and real-world impact of the Convention, which further supports the universalisation message. Finally, President, Ireland emphasises the vital role that the ISU plays in supporting the implementation and universalisation of the Convention. We underline its tangible contribution to strengthening our efforts in protecting and safeguarding the treaty and its aims, and we encourage states to ensure that the ISU has the finances and resources it needs to continue its essential work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ireland. The next speaker will be Germany. I'm waiting to hear from the interpreters if we can push in 2 more speakers before we close. But for now, I call on Germany to deliver their statement. Ambassador.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, Germany aligns itself with a statement by the EU. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation to you and your team for your efforts and dedication in organizing and leading this international meeting, as well as preparing for the 23rd meeting of states parties to the Anti-Personnel Mine Convention in December. I would like to assure you of the full support and cooperation of my delegation throughout your presidency during these challenging times for our convention. Madam President, I wish to thank the Convention's Special Envoys, His Royal Highness Prince Mirad of Jordan and Her Royal Highness Princess Astrid of Belgium, for their continued engagement and vital stimulus for the Convention. I also thank the ISU for its important role in supporting states parties in fulfilling their obligations under the Convention. At the same time, I would like to acknowledge the important role of civil society in promoting and implementing our Convention. I also would like to thank the excellent panelists we heard this morning, underlining from different angles that there is no place for complacency in this regard. Madam President, it is particularly in challenging times that we should recognize and value positive developments. In this regard, we note with appreciation the accessions of the Marshall Islands, Tonga, and most recently, Lebanon. These highly welcome steps reflect the enduring appeal of humanitarian arms control. We warmly welcome our new fellow states parties, and we are looking forward working closely with them. At the same time, we cannot ignore the recent withdrawals. These developments highlight the severe impact of Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine on our convention, on international arms control, and on the broader international order. Let us be clear, and I align this especially in light of the statement we heard this morning by the delegate of Belarus. Let us be clear, responsibility for these developments lies with Russia alone. Madam President, the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention remains a cornerstone of humanitarian arms control and an essential instrument for strengthening the protection of human life and security in times of peace, and even more so in situations of armed conflict. Against this backdrop, we should harness the recent increase in media attention and use it to advocate for the Convention by highlighting its achievements and continued relevance rather than allowing the narrative to be dominated by withdrawals or compliance concerns. The most visible achievements include the accession of the 3 states over the past 15 months. Another encouraging signal comes from Croatia, which has recently been declared mine-free after years of international cooperation and humanitarian demining. And we extend our heartfelt congratulations on this important milestone. We should also continue our efforts to reach out to non-signatories, emphasizing how membership in the Convention protects populations and creates new opportunities for partnership and cooperation, and offering advice and support with a view to implementing its obligations. Madam President, allow me to conclude by once again reaffirming Germany's steadfast commitment to the APMBC. You can continue to rely on Germany's dedicated support as we work together towards its effective implementation and the achievement of its goals and objectives in times that provide opportunities for progress in strengthening its implementation, as well as in times posing particular challenges for further gains in the universalization of the Convention. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ambassador. The interpreters have allowed us to bring in at least 2 more speakers before we close. So I will call on Belgium, followed by Thailand, and the rest of the speakers will come in the afternoon. Belgium, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the interpreters for their flexibility. Belgium aligns itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the EU and would like to make the following remarks in its national capacity. Madam President, Excellencies, colleagues, dear members of the Mine Action community, we congratulate the Lebanese Republic on its decision to join this convention and look forward to fully embracing Lebanon as part of this family of nations in November. The story of Lebanon and the convention is one of hope. Hope for Lebanon and its people. Hope for a life free of anti-personnel mines, but also hope beyond Lebanese borders, because this story tells something about the strength of this convention and our universalization efforts. Madam President, allow me to use the example of Lebanon to illustrate 3 lessons we can draw from our collective universalization efforts. First, Lebanon's commitment illustrates that the appeal of this convention and its humanitarian objectives continues to resonate. We appreciate that Lebanon made this courageous decision in times of active conflict. Their decision demonstrates once again our shared belief that an adequate defense does not hinge on the use of anti-personnel mines, and that the military utility of these crude weapons will never outweigh their humanitarian costs. Second, their story tells us that universalization efforts are not binary. Each step in line with the purpose and objective of this convention is one worth advocating for. Lebanon has for a long time aligned itself closely with the provisions of this convention. The country remained committed to humanitarian mine action and refrained from using anti-personnel mines. Lebanon actively participated as observer in several meetings and shared its experience and expertise in the margins thereof. Each of these steps had a real impact in the world and brought Lebanon closer to full membership. Thirdly, universalization efforts are more often a marathon than a sprint, and the track is not always straight. For many years, states parties, consecutive presidencies, the special envoys, the ISU, civil society, and the ICRC all have invested heavily in bringing Lebanon closer to joining the convention. In 2019, Her Royal Highness Princess Astrid of Belgium visited Lebanon in her capacity as special envoy and engaged constructively with the Lebanese authorities. Not long thereafter, in 2020, the devastating explosion in Beirut and the spread of COVID-19 demanded the country's political attention. Last December, together with His Royal Highness Prince Mired of Jordan, a special envoy resumed their engagement with the Lebanese authorities, building on all previous efforts. Universalization can sometimes be slow, and the results may take some time to manifest themselves. Madam President, it is with these lessons in mind that Belgium continues to invest efforts to further the universalization of this convention. In recent times, Her Royal Highness Princess Astrid and Her Royal Highness Prince Mired held meetings with the Federated States of Micronesia, Laos, PDR, and Bahrain. Her Royal Highness Princess Astrid also wrote letters to their heads of states and government. We also had a meeting with the Attorney General and Secretary of Justice of Micronesia, which was encouraging to reach a mine-free Pacific. Madam President, let me conclude by expressing our hope that together we can continue to build on the success stories of this convention and that the stigma that surrounds the use of these weapons will be upheld. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I now call upon Thailand. Please, if you could be as brief as possible.
Thank you, Madam President. And special thanks to the interpreter for their flexibility. And as this is the first time my delegation takes the floor, allow me to congratulate you on assuming the role of the President of the 23rd MSP. Please rest assured of our full support. We also wish to commend you and your predecessors for the effort to advance universalization, particularly in the face of recent withdrawals. And in this regard, Thailand warmly welcomes Lebanon's accession to the convention. Having Lebanon join the convention amid its complex security situation and ongoing conflict reaffirms that armed conflict cannot and must not serve as a justification for failing to adhere to the convention and international humanitarian law. Madam President, while celebrating this new state party, we must also acknowledge that the convention and its norms continue to face serious challenges around the world, particularly as a result of geopolitical tension and state security concerns. The reintroduction of anti-personnel mines to the battlefields not only undermines humanitarian disarmament norms, but also places civilian protection under grave risk and hinders socio-economic development in the long run. For Thailand, universalization of the APMBC and its norms remains our key priority. We are proud to serve in the Universalization Coordination Group and aim to promote culture of compliance and engage in constructive dialogues with states not party to the convention, encouraging their accession and promoting adherence to the humanitarian norms. We call upon states and other stakeholders to promote universal observance of the convention's norms and objectives in a sustained and coordinated manner in accordance with Action 11 and 12 of the Siem Reap Angkor Action Plan, including through full implementation of and compliance with the convention under any circumstances. And I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for being that brief. And now we're going to close the meeting for now. We have 2 side events, which will be put up on the screen there, and we can return here at 1500 hours. Thank you to all that have intervened so far. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.